The wolfless warrior who broke a kingdom. They said she'd never survive without a wolf. They were wrong. In a realm where claws meant power and fangs meant respect, Lyra Vance stood alone, human weak, blade sharp, and utterly refusing to break. While warriors shifted beneath the moon, she bled in silence. While princes played games with her heart, a king watched from the shadows. This is the story of a woman the world threw away, the broken promise that shattered her, and the night she stopped begging for a place at the table and took the whole damn throne instead. Stay until the end. You won't believe what happens. Drop a comment with your city below. Let's see who's watching. The training yard stank of blood and ambition. Lyra Vance hit the ground hard enough to taste copper, dirt grinding into her palms as laughter rippled through the watching crowd. Above her, Garrick, all 200 pounds of muscle and smugness, grinned down with teeth too white, too perfect. "Stay down, little rabbit," he said, loud enough for the gathered warriors to hear. "Save yourself the embarrassment." She didn't stay down. She never stayed down. Lyra rolled sideways as his boot slammed into the space her ribs had occupied a heartbeat before, came up in a crouch with her practice blade already moving. The wooden sword caught him across the back of the knee, not hard enough to injure, but precise enough to buckle his stance. Garrick stumbled, surprise flashing across his face before he caught himself. The laughter stopped. "Lucky shot," someone muttered from the crowd. "She fights dirty," another voice added, and Lyra wasn't sure if it was meant as insult or grudging respect. Probably both. Garrick's eyes narrowed. When he came at her again, he wasn't playing anymore. The next exchange was brutal. He had weight, reach, and the supernatural strength that came from his wolf, the beast that lived under his skin, lending him speed and power even in human form. Lyra had none of that. What she had was years of desperate training, the kind born from knowing that one mistake, one moment of weakness, could mean death in a kingdom that valued strength above all else. She ducked under his swing, felt the rush of air as the practice sword whistled past her ear. Too close. Her body screamed at her to retreat, to create distance, but distance meant losing. She stepped in instead, inside his guard where his size became a disadvantage, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. Garrick wheezed, staggered back. Before he could recover, Lyra swept his legs. This time, when he hit the ground, he stayed there. Silence blanketed the yard. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. The sound was sharp, deliberate, almost mocking in its precision. Lyra turned to see Captain Thorne, grizzled, scarred, with eyes like flint, standing at the edge of the training circle. "Not bad," Thorne said, his voice carrying across the yard. "For someone without a wolf, you almost look competent." Almost. The word hung in the air like a noose. Lyra straightened, met his gaze without flinching. "With respect, sir, almost just beat your third-best fighter." A ripple of tension moved through the crowd. Nobody talked back to Thorne. Certainly not wolfless outcasts who existed at the bottom of the kingdom's brutal hierarchy. Thorne's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Garrick," he said, not looking away from Lyra, "is my 20th best fighter. I keep him around because he's good at following orders, not because he can win a fair fight." He paused. "The fact that you think beating him is an accomplishment tells me everything I need to know about where you stand." The words landed like fists. Lyra felt heat crawl up her neck, shame and anger mixing into something that tasted like poison. "Dismissed," Thorne said, turning away. "All of you. Except you, Vance. We need to talk about your situation." Her situation. Right. Because in the kingdom of Thornhaven, being wolfless wasn't just a disability. It was a death sentence waiting to happen. The captain's office was small, cramped, and smelled like old leather and older grudges. Lyra stood at attention while Thorne poured himself something amber from a bottle that had seen better decades. "You know why you're here?" he asked without preamble. "No, sir." "Liar." He took a drink, studied her over the rim of his glass. "You're here because Prince Adrian has been making inquiries about you." Lyra's heart did something complicated in her chest. She kept her face neutral, a skill she'd learned young in a world that punished weakness. "I wasn't aware the prince knew I existed, sir." "Don't play stupid. It doesn't suit you." Thorne set down his glass with a sharp clink. Adrian's been watching you for months, coming to the training yard, asking questions, making it very clear to anyone with eyes that he's interested. The way he said interested made it sound like a disease. And that's a problem because you're wolfless. Thorne's voice went flat, matter of fact. Because Adrian is second in line to the throne and expected to choose a mate from the high families. Because if he claims you, it'll cause a political nightmare that'll make the border wars look like a fucking tea party. Lyra swallowed. I didn't ask for his attention. No, but you have it, which means you need to be smart about this. Thorne leaned forward, his scarred hands flat on the desk. Listen to me, girl. I've seen a lot of soldiers come through this yard. Most of them had wolves, had family, had something. You have none of that. What you have is skill, discipline, and a stubborn refusal to die that I can't help but respect. Something in her chest loosened slightly. Thorne had never spoken to her like this, like she was a soldier instead of a problem to be managed. But respect doesn't change reality, he continued. If Adrian makes you a promise, if he raises your hopes, and then, when the politics get ugly, when his father starts applying pressure, he walks away, you'll be destroyed, not just your reputation, your life. The court will eat you alive for daring to reach above your station. I'm not reaching for anything, Lyra said quietly. I'm just trying to survive. Yeah, well, survival's about to get a lot more complicated. Thorne straightened, his expression softening by a fraction. The king wants to see you, tonight, private audience in his study after the evening meal. The words hit her like cold water. King Ronan? She hated how uncertain her voice sounded. Why? That's what you're going to find out. Thorne picked up his glass again, drained it in one swallow. Word of advice? Be honest. Ronan's a lot of things, but he's not stupid. He sees through bullshit faster than anyone I've ever met. And Vance? He met her eyes. Whatever game you think you're playing with his son, the king's been watching that too. Tread carefully. She should have eaten dinner. Instead, Lyra found herself in the castle's lower practice room, working through sword forms with single-minded intensity. Sweat soaked through her shirt. Her muscles screamed. She didn't stop. The patterns were familiar, comforting in their precision. Block, parry, thrust. Again. Block, parry, thrust. The movements required no thought, which was good because her mind was racing. The king wants to see you. Why? What did Ronan want with a wolfless soldier who barely ranked above the servants? Was this about Adrian? A warning? A threat? Your footwork's off. Lyra spun, blade up, heart hammering. Prince Adrian stood in the doorway, backlit by torchlight, looking like something out of a romance novel some bored noblewoman might read. Golden hair, easy smile, the kind of handsome that made rational thought difficult. He wore his casual leathers, the ones that somehow made him look both dangerous and approachable, and his hands were empty, relaxed. Your Highness, Lyra said, lowering her sword but not sheathing it. I didn't hear you come in. I'm quiet when I want to be. Adrian stepped into the room, his movements fluid with the unconscious grace of someone who'd never had to fight for respect. You've been avoiding me. It wasn't a question. I've been training, she said carefully, trying to earn my place. You've already earned it. Adrian moved closer, and damn her treacherous heart for beating faster. You're one of the best fighters in the guard, wolf or no wolf. Everyone knows it, even if they won't say it out loud. Being good doesn't matter if I'm not... If you're not what? Strong enough? Fast enough? One of us? His voice carried an edge now, frustration bleeding through the charm. That's bullshit, Lyra. You've proven yourself 100 times over. She wanted to believe him. Gods, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. Then why are they calling me to see your father? The question escaped before she could stop it, raw and uncertain. Adrian's expression shifted, something complicated crossing his features. I may have told him something, about us, about my intentions. The practiced sword suddenly felt very heavy in her hand. What intentions? I want to claim you. The words came out in a rush, eager and reckless. Officially, at the next gathering. I know it's fast, I know it's going to cause problems, but I don't care. I've watched you fight, Lyra. I've seen you refuse to break when anyone else would have given up. You're stronger than half the wolves in this castle, and I... Stop. Adrian blinked. What? Just stop. Lyra set down her sword, pressed her palms against her eyes. Her head was spinning. You can't just decide that. There are rules, protocols, political considerations. Fuck the politics. You don't get to say that. The words exploded out of her, months of frustration and fear finally finding voice. You're a prince. You can ignore the politics because they don't affect you the same way. But me? If you claim me and it goes wrong, if your father refuses or the court objects or you... She stopped, swallowed hard. If you change your mind, I'm the one who pays. Not you. Me. Adrian stared at her, and for a moment she saw something like understanding in his eyes. Then his jaw set with familiar royal stubbornness. I won't change my mind. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He stepped closer, took her hands in his. His skin was warm, calloused from sword work. I've never been more certain of anything. Let me prove it to you. Let me... The door opened. They sprang apart like guilty children, but it didn't matter. King Ronan stood in the threshold, his presence filling the room like a physical force. Where Adrian was golden and bright, Ronan was shadow and steel, older, harder, with eyes that missed nothing. Father, Adrian said, his voice tight, we were just... I know what you were doing. Ronan's gaze moved from his son to Lyra, and she felt that look like a weight. Adrian, leave us, but leave us. It wasn't a request. Adrian's hands flexed at his sides. For a heartbeat, Lyra thought he might argue, might refuse, might stand his ground. Then his shoulders dropped slightly, and he nodded. I'll see you tomorrow, Lyra. He left without looking back. The silence that followed felt dangerous. King Ronan stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. He moved like a wolf, even in human form, predatory, precise, absolutely in control. Everything about him screamed power, from the gray threading his dark hair to the scars that marked his hands. Sit, he said, gesturing to a bench against the wall. I'd rather stand, Your Majesty. It wasn't a request. Lyra sat. She'd survived this long by knowing when to push and when to yield. Ronan remained standing, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You're afraid, he said finally. Not a question, a statement. Should I be? That depends. He tilted his head slightly. How much has my son promised you? The directness caught her off guard. In court, people danced around top topics, spoke in riddles and implications. Ronan didn't bother with that shit. He's talked about claiming me, Lyra said carefully, but I haven't agreed to anything. Smart. Ronan moved to the window, looked out at the darkening sky. Adrian means well, he always has. But meaning well and following through are different things, especially when pressure is applied. You don't think he'll go through with it? I think my son has never wanted for anything in his life, which makes him generous with promises he doesn't fully understand the cost of keeping. Ronan turned back to face her. You're wolfless. Do you know what that means for someone in his position to choose you? I can imagine. No, you can't. His voice remained level, almost conversational, but steel ran underneath. The high families would revolt. The council would split. Half the kingdom would see it as weakness, the other half as insanity. The border lords, already hungry for any sign of instability, would press their advantage. And you, he paused. You would become the most hated woman in Thornhaven overnight. Each word landed like a blow. Lyra kept her chin up through force of will alone. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't believe in letting people walk blindly into disasters. Ronan crossed his arms, leaned back against the window frame. You're a good soldier, Vance. Better than good. You've earned respect through skill and discipline, which is more than most of the noble-born warriors can say. You deserve honesty. And the honest truth is that I should refuse him, stay in my place, except that someone like me could never. The honest truth, Ronan interrupted, is that promises made without conviction are the most dangerous kind. They feel real in the moment. They shine bright. But when tested, when consequences become real, they shatter. And the person who believed in them gets cut on the broken pieces. Lyra met his eyes. They were gray, cold as winter stone, and completely unreadable. You think Adrian will break his promise? I think Adrian has never been truly tested, and I think you should be prepared for what happens if, when that test comes. The words hurt more than they should have. Maybe because they echoed the fears she'd been trying to ignore for months. Maybe because coming from Ronan, they carried the weight of experience. "What would you have me do?" she asked quietly. "Reject him? Humiliate him before he gets the chance to humiliate me?" "I would have you be ready." Ronan pushed off from the window, moved toward the door. "Hope for the best if you want, but prepare for the worst. Because in this kingdom, survival isn't about being loved, it's about being unbreakable." He opened the door, paused. "One more thing, Vance. When Adrian's promise falls apart, notice I said when, not if. Remember this conversation. Remember that I told you the truth when everyone else fed you pretty lies. That might matter later." Then he was gone, leaving Lyra alone with her sword, her doubts, and the sinking feeling that she was standing on the edge of a cliff she couldn't see the bottom of. The next 3 weeks were surreal. Adrian, true to his impulsive nature, didn't just hint at his intentions, he announced them. At training, in the Great Hall, to anyone who would listen and many who wouldn't. He brought her flowers, which was absurd. He sought her out between drills, talked about the future with the kind of reckless optimism that came from never having been denied anything important. And slowly, impossibly, the castle began to react. Some of it was positive. Junior soldiers who'd always respected her skill now greeted her in the corridors. A few of the servants smiled when she passed. She caught fragments of conversation, whispers about fairy tales and true love and similar nonsense. But most of it was poison. The noble families closed ranks immediately. Lady Celeste, beautiful, wolf-strong, from a bloodline that traced back to the kingdom's founding, made her contempt obvious. She had, everyone knew, expected to be Adrian's choice. Finding herself displaced by a wolfless nobody brought out her worst. "Tell me," Celeste said one evening, intercepting Lyra in the corridor outside the hall, "what does it feel like, knowing you're nothing but a prince's temporary fascination?" Her ladies-in-waiting giggled, a sound like broken glass. Lyra kept walking. Engaging would only make it worse. "I'm talking to you, girl." Celeste's voice sharpened. "The least you could do is acknowledge your betters." "I didn't realize we were having a conversation," Lyra said without stopping. "Sounded more like you were talking to yourself." More giggles, nervous now, and Celeste's face went red. "You little problem, Lady Celeste?" Captain Thorne appeared from a side corridor, his timing either coincidental or perfect. His scarred face showed nothing but professional courtesy, but his presence was enough. Celeste might come from nobility, but Thorne commanded the guard. Even she wouldn't risk a direct confrontation. "No problem," Celeste said through her teeth. "I was just welcoming our prince's new companion to court society." "How generous." Thorne's tone suggested the opposite. "I'm sure Vance appreciates it. Though she's got drills in 10 minutes, so unless your ladyship has official business." Celeste swept away with her entourage, shooting Lyra a look that promised retribution. "You're making enemies," Thorne observed once they were gone. "I'm not making anything. They're choosing to be enemies all on their own." "Fair point." Thorne fell into step beside her. "How's the prince?" "Persistent." "That's one word for it." He paused. "The king asked about you yesterday. Wanted to know how you were handling the attention." Lyra's stomach tightened. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That you're holding steady, staying focused, not letting it go to your head." They reached the training yard entrance. "Also that Lady Celeste is planning something nasty, and you should watch your back." "She's angry. She'll get over it." "No," Thorne said quietly. "She won't. Because this isn't about you, Vance. It's about power, position, and a noble family that's losing ground. They won't just accept this. They'll fight, and they fight dirty." He was right. Lyra knew he was right. But what was she supposed to do? Reject Adrian to appease people who'd always hated her? Run away from the first real chance at something better she'd ever had? The challenge came on a cold morning 2 weeks before the gathering. Lyra was running drills with the junior squad, teaching them holds and counters, trying to pass on what she'd learned through years of surviving without a wolf's advantages. She'd just finished demonstrating a wrist lock when the yard went silent. Lady Celeste stood at the gate, dressed in leathers that probably cost more than Lyra earned in a year. Her wolf was visible in her eyes, that golden glow that marked the beast beneath the skin. "I challenge you," Celeste said clearly. "By ancient right, combat trial, no weapons, first blood or submission." The world tilted. Combat trials were serious, formal challenges that carried legal weight. They were rare, reserved for disputes that couldn't be settled any other way. And they were always fought in wolf form, pitting beast against beast in a contest of pure primal power. "I can't accept that," Lyra said, keeping her voice level despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I don't have a wolf." "Exactly." Celeste's smile was razor sharp. "Which means you'll fight in human form, against me in wolf form, unless you'd like to formally admit you're unworthy of the prince's attention and withdraw your claim on him." The trap was perfect. Refuse the challenge, and she'd be branded a coward, proving she didn't belong. Accept, and she'd be torn apart by a wolf 3 times her size with supernatural strength and healing. "That's illegal," someone said. Lyra thought it might have been Garrick, the fighter she'd beaten weeks ago. "Trial law requires equal form. You can't—" "Trial law requires matched form," Celeste corrected sweetly. "She's human. I'm offering to fight her as human and wolf. That's more than fair considering she's been presuming to take what belongs to wolves." Lyra's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Some legal loophole. "I'll fight." The words left her mouth before her brain caught up. The yard erupted into chaos. Voices shouting, arguing, someone running for Captain Thorne. But Lyra barely heard them. She was staring at Celeste, at the triumph in those cold blue eyes, and understanding with perfect clarity that this had always been the plan. Get her emotional. Get her angry. Get her to make a stupid choice that would end with her broken and Adrian free to choose someone appropriate. "Excellent," Celeste purred. 3 days? The gathering arena? Witnessed by the full court. She leaned closer, dropped her voice. "I'm going to enjoy this, little rabbit. I'm going to break you so thoroughly that even your precious prince won't be able to stand looking at what's left." Then she was gone, leaving Lyra standing in the center of the practice yard, surrounded by shocked faces and the weight of a death sentence she'd just accepted. Captain Thorne found her in the armory that evening, inventorying weapons she couldn't use in the upcoming fight. "You're an idiot," he said without preamble. "Probably. Definitely." He pulled up a stool, sat heavily. "You know she's going to kill you, right? Not just beat you, kill you. And she'll claim it was accidental, heat of battle, tragic loss. The council might even believe her." "I know." "Then why?" Thorne's frustration bled through. "Why accept? You could have walked away, survived, found another path. To what?" Lyra looked up from the spear she'd been examining. "Live the rest of my life as the woman who was too weak to fight for herself? Watch Adrian choose someone else while everyone whispers about how I knew my place after all? I might survive that way, Captain, but I wouldn't be alive." Thorne was quiet for a long moment. "The prince has been informed," he said finally. "He's not taking it well. Let me guess. He's going to challenge her, demand the trial be canceled, make a grand dramatic gesture that'll somehow make everything worse? Actually, he's locked himself in his chambers and won't come out." Thorne's voice carried disapproval. "His personal guard says he's been drinking since noon." Of course he had. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. Not surprise, exactly. More like the death of something she'd been trying hard not to name. Adrian meant his promises. She believed that, but meaning them and having the spine to fight for them when things got ugly, those were different things. "The king asked to see you," Thorne continued. "Tonight. Same as before. His private study. He wants to tell me I'm an idiot too? Probably. But Ronan's never called a meeting just to state the obvious." Thorne stood, headed for the door. "Go see him, Vance. At this point, what's the worst that could happen?" Ronan's study was warm, firelit, lined with books and maps, and the accumulated weight of a kingdom's worth of decisions. The king himself sat behind a massive oak desk, reviewing what looked like military reports. He didn't look up when Lyra entered. "Sit." She sat, feeling like a child called before a parent, except her parents were long dead, and Ronan was about as far from parental as a person could get. 3 days, Ronan said, still reading. That's not much time to prepare for a fight you can't win. I wasn't aware winning was an option. That got his attention. He set down the report, leaned back, studied her with those winter gray eyes. Then why accept? It was the same question Thorne had asked, but somehow coming from Ronan, it felt different. Like he actually wanted to understand rather than just confirm she was making a fatal mistake. Because I'm tired, Lyra said quietly. Tired of being the exception, the problem, the thing that doesn't fit. Tired of fighting for scraps while pretending I'm okay with it. I know I'm going to lose, Your Majesty, but at least I'll lose on my feet fighting instead of crawling away and calling it wisdom. Ronan was silent for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside, wind rattled the windows. My son is in his chambers, drunk, the king said finally. Convinced he's failed you. Convinced this is somehow his fault. And he's right. It is his fault. Not because he chose you, but because he chose you without understanding what that choice would cost. Without being ready to defend it when the cost came due. The words were brutal. Also true. I warned you, Ronan continued. Promises without conviction. You remember? I remember. Good. He stood, moved to the window that overlooked the training grounds. I'm going to make you an offer, Vance, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Lyra's pulse quickened. What kind of offer? The kind that might keep you alive. Ronan turned, and something in his expression had shifted, become harder, more calculating. Celeste is fighting to eliminate a threat and claim what she sees as rightfully hers. But trial law has a clause most people forget. If a third party with sufficient rank intervenes before the trial begins, they can claim authority over the challenged party, effectively removing them from the competition. Understanding came slowly, then all at once. You want to claim me before the trial, so Adrian can't. I want to offer you a choice, Ronan corrected. You can go into that arena and die proving a point no one will remember in a month. Or you can accept my authority, cancel the trial, and live to fight battles that actually matter. Your life, your decision. It should have been an easy choice, survival versus death, security versus pride. But Lyra's throat felt tight, her hands cold. If I accept Adrian, we'll move on. Find someone appropriate. Live his life? Ronan's voice remained flat, factual. You'll remain in the guard, continue training, and eventually people will forget this whole mess. You'll be safe, Vance. Isn't that what matters? Was it? Was safety what she wanted? Or had months of Adrian's attention, of daring to hope for something more, changed her in ways she couldn't take back? I need to think about it, she whispered. You have until tomorrow evening. After that, the trial proceeds, and I can't intervene without causing political chaos that'll hurt more people than just you. Ronan returned to his desk, picked up his reports. Dismissed. Lyra stood on numb legs, walked to the door. Vance? She paused, looked back. Ronan met her eyes, and for just a moment something almost human flickered across his features. For what it's worth, you deserved better than my son's half-formed promises. I hope you remember that, whatever you decide. So, she didn't sleep that night. Instead, Lyra sat in her small quarters, barely more than a cell really, and tried to figure out what the hell she actually wanted. Safety? Ronan offered that. A way out, a return to the known. Adrian? Even if she survived the trial somehow, his reaction to this whole crisis had shown his limits. He meant well. But meaning well wasn't enough when the kingdom came for you with claws out. Or maybe she was done choosing based on what others offered. Maybe for once, she should choose based on what she could live with. Dawn found her in the training yard, working through sword forms with mechanical precision. Her body knew the movements even if her mind was elsewhere. Block, parry, thrust. Again. Block, parry, thrust. You're here early. Lyra spun. Adrian stood at the yard's edge, looking like death slightly warmed over. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair a mess, and guilt radiated off him in waves. I'm sorry, he said before she could speak. I'm so fucking sorry, Lyra. I should have done something, said something, stopped this before. It's done, she interrupted. The challenge is issued. The only question now is whether I fight it. My father made you an offer, not a question. Adrian stepped closer and she could smell alcohol on his breath. He told me this morning, said he'd claim authority over you, cancel the whole thing. He did. Are you going to accept? The naked hope in Adrian's voice made her chest ache. He wanted her to take the out, she realized. Wanted her safe and alive and conveniently no longer his problem to defend. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Lyra, please. Adrian reached for her hands. She let him take them, felt the warmth of his skin. I can't lose you. Not like this. Not because I was stupid enough to think declarations mattered more than strategy. Take my father's offer. Let this blow over. We can what? She pulled her hands back gently. Wait until the next challenge, the next political crisis. Keep pretending that me being wolfless doesn't matter until the kingdom forces us to face reality? It doesn't matter. Not to me. But it matters to everyone else, Lyra's voice cracked. And you? Adrian, where were you yesterday, when I needed someone to stand with me to help me figure this out? His face crumpled. I couldn't. You were drinking, hiding, hoping it would somehow resolve itself. She wasn't angry, somehow, just tired. So tired. That's not your fault. You're not built for this kind of fight. But it means I can't rely on you when things get bad. And things are always going to be bad, for someone like me trying to exist in your world. I'll do better, Adrian said desperately. I swear Don't. Lyra stepped back, creating distance. Don't make more promises you're not sure you can keep. We've had enough of those. She left him standing there, walked back toward the castle with no clear destination in mind. Just away. Away from promises and hope, and the fairy tales she'd been stupid enough to believe in. The decision, she realized, had already been made. She found Ronan in the council chamber, arguing with advisors about border defenses. When he saw her, something shifted in his expression. Gentlemen, leave us. They left, shooting Lyra curious glances that she ignored. I'm not accepting your offer, she said once they were alone. Ronan's eyebrows rose fractionally. You'd rather die? I'd rather fight. Lyra moved closer, met his eyes without flinching. Not because I think I'll win. Because I'm done letting other people decide my worth. Celeste wants to prove I don't belong? Fine. Let her try. Either I'll survive, somehow, or I won't. But at least it'll be my choice. My fight. Not another decision someone else made for me. For a long moment, Ronan said nothing. Then, slowly he nodded. Stupid, he said quietly. Brave, but stupid. Probably. You'll need a second. Someone in your corner during the trial. Ronan stood, moved around the desk. The captain's volunteered, but I'm overruling him. Your Majesty. I'll stand with you. The words were flat, factual, allowing no argument. If you're determined to walk into a slaughter, the least I can do is make sure the rules are followed and the kill is clean. Lyra stared at him. Why would you do that? Because my son made you promises and then hid when they came due. Because you deserve better than dying alone in front of a crowd that sees you as entertainment. And because... He paused, something complicated crossing his features. Because I've spent my entire life making calculated decisions. And just once I'd like to do something stupid for the right reasons. It wasn't a declaration of love or dramatic rescue. It was just honesty. Raw and uncomfortable and real. Thank you, Lyra whispered. Don't thank me yet, Ronan said. We've got 3 days to figure out how to keep you breathing. The odds are shit, but they're not quite zero. Now come on, we have work to do. And somehow, impossibly, that's when everything truly began to change. The first lesson King Ronan taught her had nothing to do with fighting. Stop thinking like prey, he said on that first morning, watching her run defensive drills in the private training room he'd commandeered. Every movement you make is about survival, about lasting one more second. That's not going to work against Celeste. Lyra caught her breath, sweat dripping down her spine. With respect, Your Majesty, survival is all I've ever known. Then learn something new. Ronan crossed the room with that predator's grace, took the practice sword from her hand. Celeste expects you to run, to dodge, to try and outlast her. She's banking on you being defensive. So we do the opposite. You want me to attack a wolf 3 times my size. I want you to stop seeing this as a fight you're supposed to lose. He handed back the sword, positioned himself across from her. Again, but this time, come at me like you mean it. She did, and he put her on her ass in 3 seconds flat. Better, Ronan said, offering a hand to pull her up. You hesitated less. Now do it again. They trained like that for hours, brutal, exhausting work that left her bruised and shaking. But something shifted in those sessions. Ronan didn't train her like a charity case or a lost cause. He trained her like a soldier preparing for war, expecting competence, accepting nothing less than her absolute best. Your problem isn't skill, he told her during a water break, his own shirt dark with sweat. It's belief. You've spent so long being told you're not enough that you've started accepting it as fact. That stops now. Easy to say when you've never been wolfless. No, but I've been underestimated. Ronan's voice went hard. When I took the throne, half the council thought I was too young, too aggressive, too unmarried to hold it. They waited for me to fail, schemed to replace me, and every single one of them learned that underestimation is a gift, because it means they don't see you coming. Lyra studied him, this king who'd always seemed like a distant, untouchable force. Up close, drenched in sweat and speaking without the formal mask of court, he was just a man. Scarred, tired, but absolutely unbreakable. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? Not the political reasons or making up for Adrian's mistakes. Why do you actually care if I live or die? Ronan was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Because I'm tired of watching potential get wasted, he said finally. This kingdom throws away anyone who doesn't fit a narrow definition of strength. It's wasteful, it's stupid, and I'm done pretending it's necessary. He stood, tossed her a towel. Now get up. We've got 2 more days, and you're still telegraphing your left hook. The bruises from that training would last weeks, but something else grew alongside them, something that felt dangerously close to hope. The castle, meanwhile, had become a viper's nest. News of the upcoming trial spread like wildfire. Nobles who'd never cared about Lyra's existence suddenly had opinions. Most of them centered on how her death would prove the natural order. Servants whispered in corners, guards placed bets on how long she'd last, and Lady Celeste held court like a queen already crowned. Lyra encountered her 2 days before the trial, in the corridor outside the Great Hall. Celeste was surrounded by her usual entourage, beautiful, wealthy, wolf-blessed women who looked at Lyra like something they'd scraped off their boots. Still breathing, Celeste observed, her voice carrying that particular aristocratic drawl that made everything sound like an insult. How industrious of you. Lyra kept walking. Engaging was pointless. I heard the king's been training you personally, Celeste continued, falling into step beside her. Her ladies followed like a perfumed wake. How charitable of him. Though I suppose even charity has limits. 2 days from now, you'll understand exactly where those limits are. Is there a point to this conversation? Lyra said evenly. Or are you just practicing your villain speech? One of the ladies gasped. Celeste's eyes flashed gold, her wolf rising to the surface. Careful, little rabbit. Your borrowed confidence won't save you in the arena. Neither will your borrowed relevance, Lyra shot back. Without this trial, without me to hate, you're just another noble desperately trying to matter. At least when I die, people will remember why. Can you say the same? The corridor went silent. Celeste's face transformed, rage and something uglier twisting her features. For a heartbeat, Lyra thought she might attack right there. Rules be damned. Then Celeste smiled, cold and sharp as winter. I'm going to enjoy breaking you, she whispered. Slowly. I'm going to make sure you feel every second of it. And when you're bleeding on that arena floor, begging for mercy, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that you had the chance to walk away. She swept past, her entourage scrambling to follow, leaving Lyra alone with her racing heart and the sinking realization that she'd just made a very powerful enemy even angrier. That was stupid, Captain Thorne said from behind her. Lyra jumped, spun. The captain stood in a doorway she hadn't noticed, arms crossed. You were watching? Someone has to keep you from getting killed before the actual killing starts. Thorne jerked his head, indicating she should follow. Walk with me. We need to talk. They ended up in the armory. Thorn's preferred location for serious conversations, apparently. He poured them both something that smelled like turpentine and probably tasted worse. Drink. Lyra drank. It was worse. Lady Celeste's family has been making moves, Thorn said without preamble. Political ones. They're pushing hard with the council, arguing that the trial should be fought under ancient rules, no interference, no mercy, fight to death, or complete submission. I thought that was already the case. Technically, the rules allow for the fight to be stopped if the outcome is obvious, prevents unnecessary deaths, preserves fighters for the kingdom, all that practical bullshit. Thorn swirled his drink. Celeste's family wants that protection removed. They want you dead, not just defeated. The liquor turned to acid in Lyra's stomach. Can they do that? They're trying. The king's blocking it so far, but the vote's close. 3 more council members swing their way, and you're fighting with no safety net. He met her eyes. Which brings me to my point. It's not too late to withdraw. Take the king's original offer, claim his authority, walk away from this insanity. We've been through this. That was before I knew they were actively trying to ensure your death. Thorn's voice went hard. This isn't just about pride anymore, Vance. This is about powerful people who see you as a threat to the social order and want you removed permanently. You're not just fighting Celeste. You're fighting the entire fucking system. Then maybe it's time the system got a fight. Thorn stared at her, then laughed, sharp and bitter. You sound like the king. He said almost the same thing when I warned him backing you would cause political chaos. He drained his glass. You're both insane, you know that? Probably. Lyra set down her own glass, untouched. But I'm done being sane and safe and slowly suffocating. If I'm going to go down, at least it'll be on my terms. Brave words for someone who's 2 days away from being torn apart by a wolf. You have better ones? Thorn was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. No, I really don't. Just try not to die. I've gotten used to having you around. It'd be inconvenient to train a replacement. Coming from Thorn, it was practically a declaration of love. Mamt. She found Adrian that evening in the castle gardens, sitting alone on a bench that overlooked the training yards. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like someone had dimmed his golden print shine. You're avoiding me, she said, sitting down beside him. Can you blame me? His voice was rough, tired. Every time I see you, I'm reminded of how badly I fucked this up. You didn't... Yes, I did. Adrian turned to face her, and the raw pain in his eyes made her chest ache. I made you promises I wasn't strong enough to keep. I put a target on your back and then hid when the consequences showed up. My father's doing more to protect you than I am, and he barely even knows you. The truth of it sat heavy between them. I thought I was ready, Adrian continued. Thought choosing you would be enough, that declarations and public statements would matter. But they don't, do they? Not when things get real. Not when the cost shows up and demands payment. Adrian, I love you. His words came out broken, desperate. I know I have no right to say that after everything, but it's true. I love you, and I'm going to lose you, and it's my own damn fault. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest, not quite breaking, but definitely fracturing, because she'd wanted to hear those words for months, had imagined them in 100 different scenarios. Always beautiful, always perfect. This was neither. You don't love me, she said quietly. You love the idea of me. The story of the prince who chose the underdog, who defied convention for true love. That's a nice story, Adrian, but stories don't prepare you for reality. Don't teach you how to fight when the world pushes back. That's not fair, isn't it? She stood, looked down at him. If you loved me, really loved me, you would have been there. Not drunk in your chambers, not hiding from the consequences. You would have stood beside me when I accepted Celeste's challenge, helped me prepare, been my partner instead of another problem I had to manage. Adrian's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Lyra. If I could go back, if I could change, but you can't. The words came out gentler than she expected. And honestly, I don't think I'd want you to, because this, all of this, showed me something important. I was so desperate for someone to choose me, to validate me, that I ignored what I actually needed, which wasn't a prince with pretty promises. It was someone willing to stand in the fire with me. I wanted to be that person. I know, but wanting and being are different things. She touched his shoulder briefly. A goodbye, though neither of them said it. You're going to be a good king someday, Adrian. Just not for someone like me. She left him there in the garden, surrounded by flowers and fading dreams, and felt lighter than she had in weeks. The truth hurt, but it also freed her from hoping for something that was never going to be. The night before the trial, Lyra couldn't sleep. She'd expected that. What she hadn't expected was the knock on her door near midnight, soft, almost tentative. King Ronan stood in the corridor, dressed casually in training leathers, looking as tired as she felt. Can't sleep either? He asked. Seemed like a waste of time. Smart. He jerked his head toward the stairs. Come on, I want to show you something. Up at him. She followed him through the castle's winding passages, up ancient staircases, until they emerged onto the highest tower's observation deck. The night was clear, cold, and the stars were sharp enough to cut. When I first became king, Ronan said, leaning against the stone parapet, I used to come up here every night. Couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about all the ways I was going to fail. Hard to imagine you afraid of anything. Fear's not the problem. Everyone's afraid of something. He glanced at her. The trick is deciding what you're more afraid of, failing or never trying at all. They stood in silence for a while, looking out over the sleeping kingdom. Lyra could see the arena from here, a dark shape in the distance, waiting. I'm going to lose tomorrow, she said quietly. We both know that. Probably. You're supposed to argue. Tell me I have a chance. I'm not going to lie to you, Vance. The odds are shit. Celeste is stronger, faster, and has every advantage. By any rational calculation, you're walking into a slaughter. Ronan turned to face her fully. But here's what I've learned in 20 years of warfare and politics. Calculations don't account for will. They don't measure stubbornness or courage, or the sheer bloody-minded refusal to stay down when you're supposed to. Inspiring, Lyra said dryly. I feel much better now. A ghost of a smile crossed Ronan's face. What I'm saying is, don't fight to win. Fight to survive. Every second you stay on your feet is a second Celeste didn't expect. Every blow you land is one she thought impossible. Make her work for it. Make her earn the kill, because that's how legends start, Vance. Not from victories, but from the people who refuse to make it easy. Something warm unfurled in Lyra's chest. Dangerous, reckless, probably stupid. Why do I get the feeling you're not just talking about the trial? Because I'm not. Ronan's voice went soft, almost intimate. I'm talking about everything that comes after. Whether you live or die tomorrow, you've already done something important. You've shown this kingdom that wolfless doesn't mean worthless, that courage doesn't require claws. And that's going to matter, even if you're not around to see it. Lyra swallowed hard against the sudden tightness in her throat. That's a really elaborate way of preparing me to die. I'm preparing you to fight. He reached out, almost hesitantly, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was shockingly gentle from a man made of edges and ice. And to know that whatever happens, you didn't face it alone. The air between them felt electric, charged with something Lyra didn't have words for. This wasn't Adrian's bright, reckless affection. This was darker, deeper, respect forged in fire, understanding built from brutal honesty. Dangerous, her mind whispered. This was so fucking dangerous. I should get some rest, she said, not moving. You should, Ronan agreed, also not moving. For a heartbeat, they just stood there, close enough that Lyra could feel the warmth radiating from him, could count the silver threads in his dark hair. Then Ronan stepped back, breaking the spell. Tomorrow, he said, his voice returning to something closer to normal. I'll be in your corner, literally. The king standing as second is unusual, but fuck unusual. Let them talk. Let them speculate. All that matters is that you know someone's watching your back. Even if that back is about to get shredded by a wolf, especially then. He moved toward the stairs, paused. Get some sleep if you can, Vance. Tomorrow's going to be hell. Might as well face it rested. He disappeared down the stairs, leaving Lyra alone with the stars and a feeling in her chest she absolutely could not afford to name. Dawn came too fast and not fast enough. Lyra dressed in the traditional trial clothing, simple leather pants and a reinforced chest guard that would do exactly nothing against wolf claws, but made her feel slightly less exposed. No weapons, no armor, just her body, her training, and whatever desperate plan she could cobble together in the moment. A servant knocked at her door precisely at sunrise. "They're ready for you, miss." Miss. Not soldier, not warrior, just miss. Like she was already dead and they were trying to be polite about it. The walk to the arena felt surreal. Castle corridors she'd traversed 1,000 times suddenly looked different, sharper, more final. Every step was another step toward whatever came next. The arena itself was packed. Apparently impending death made for excellent entertainment. The entire court had turned out, dressed in their finest, treating this like a festival instead of a trial. Lyra saw faces she recognized, nobles who'd always looked through her, soldiers she'd trained with, servants who'd shown her small kindnesses over the years. And there, in the royal box, sat Prince Adrian. He looked like he'd been crying. Beside him was an empty chair, the king's seat, conspicuously vacant, because Ronan was standing in the challenger's corner, wearing the formal robes of a second. The crowd had noticed. The whispers were like a physical force, shock, confusion, scandal. A king standing second for a wolfless soldier against a noble daughter? Unheard of. Possibly treasonous. Ronan ignored the whispers with the ease of someone who'd stopped caring about propriety decades ago. "Ready?" he asked as Lyra approached. "Does it matter?" "Not even slightly." He handed her a water skin. "Drink. Stay hydrated. The fight's going to last longer than you think." "That's optimistic." "That's strategic. Celeste will expect you to fold quickly. When you don't, she'll get frustrated. Frustrated means sloppy. Sloppy means openings." Lyra drank, tried to steady her shaking hands. "And if there are no openings? Then you make them." Ronan's voice dropped, meant only for her. "Remember what we trained. She's stronger, but strength can be redirected. She's faster, but speed requires space. Take away her advantages and you level the field. Against a wolf? Against anything." A horn sounded, harsh, final. The crowd fell silent. Lady Celeste entered from the opposite gate, and Lyra's stomach dropped. She'd seen Celeste in wolf form before, but always at a distance. Up close, the transformation was nightmare fuel. Celeste stood easily 7 feet tall, her body a mass of silver fur and corded muscle, golden eyes glowing with predatory intelligence. She was beautiful the way avalanches were beautiful, awe-inspiring and absolutely fatal. The arbiter stepped forward, an ancient wolf with white fur and a voice that carried like thunder. "This trial is witnessed by the court and sanctioned by law. The challenger, Lady Celeste of House Silvercrest, fights to defend her honor and bloodline. The challenged, Lyra Vance, fights to prove her worth. Combat continues until submission, incapacitation, or death. Are both parties prepared?" Celeste's answer was a howl that made Lyra's bones vibrate. "I'm ready," Lyra said, and her voice only shook a little. "Then begin." Celeste moved like lightning. One moment she was across the arena, the next she was on top of Lyra, claws extended, jaws open. Lyra dove sideways, barely, the wolf's claws scoring across her back in lines of fire. She rolled, came up running, because standing still meant dying. The crowd roared. Celeste pursued, impossibly fast, cutting off escape routes with practiced ease. This was what she'd trained for, hunting prey, running down targets. And Lyra was very much prey. Except prey didn't usually punch wolves in the snout. Lyra pivoted, planted her feet, and drove her fist into Celeste's approaching face with everything she had. The impact sent shockwaves up her arm, probably broke at least one finger. But Celeste's head snapped back, surprise flashing in those golden eyes. The crowd's roar intensified. Blood scent hit the air. Lyra's from the claw marks on her back. Celeste recovered, snarled, came at her again. Faster now. Angrier. The next minutes were hell choreographed by sadists. Lyra dodged, rolled, took hits she couldn't avoid, and tried desperately to land her own. Every breath burned, every movement sent pain screaming through her torn back. But she stayed on her feet, stayed moving, because stopping meant the end. "Too slow!" Celeste's voice came out distorted, half human and all malice. "Is this all you have, little rabbit? This is what Adrian wanted to claim? Pathetic. Lyra didn't waste breath on answers. She saved it for survival, for the next dodge, the next desperate counter. Her mind cataloged injuries with clinical detachment. 3 ribs cracked or broken, shoulder dislocated when Celeste had thrown her into the arena wall, various cuts and gashes that were probably making her look like a horror show. And still she fought. Down! Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. Drop low! Lyra obeyed on instinct. Celeste's next swipe passed overhead, the wolf's momentum carrying her past. Lyra surged up, grabbed a handful of silver fur, and used Celeste's own motion to redirect her into the ground. The impact was spectacular, earth and dust exploding as hundreds of pounds of wolf slammed down hard. The arena went silent for 1 perfect second. Then chaos erupted. Half the crowd was screaming approval, the other half outrage. How dare the wolfless girl use such tactics? How dare she make the noble lady look foolish? Celeste rose slowly, deliberately. Blood matted her fur where her head had struck stone. Her golden eyes burned with something beyond rage, humiliation, fury, the promise of absolute destruction. That was a mistake, the wolf said, her voice grinding like gravel. She attacked with no mercy, no restraint. This wasn't about honor anymore. This was about obliteration. Lyra tried to dodge, but there was nowhere left to run. Claws raked across her chest. Teeth found her shoulder. She went down hard, pain whiting out her vision. Through the haze, she heard Ronan shouting something. The crowd's roar, the sound of her own blood on arena sand. Celeste stood over her, victorious, ready to deliver the killing blow. Submit, the wolf demanded. Say it. Beg for mercy and I'll make it quick. Lyra tasted copper, felt ribs grinding where they shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at her to give in, to let it end. She was broken, bleeding, defeated. What was the point of more suffering? Then her eyes found Ronan's across the arena. He wasn't shouting for her to submit. He wasn't begging the arbiter to stop the fight. He was just watching, waiting, trusting her to make her own choice. And suddenly Lyra understood. This had never been about winning. It was about choosing to stand, choosing to fight, choosing herself even when the world had given her every reason to give up. No, she whispered. What? No. Louder now, blood bubbling between her teeth. You want me dead? You fucking earn it. Celeste's eyes widened, shock, then fury. You stupid! Lyra grabbed a fistful of sand and threw it directly into the wolf's face. Celeste howled, pawed at her eyes. It wasn't honorable. It wasn't fair. It bought Lyra exactly 3 seconds to roll away, to force her broken body upright one more impossible time. The crowd was screaming, half of them calling for her death, half of them cheering her insane refusal to quit. Enough, Celeste snarled, vision clearing. I'm done playing with you, rabbit. Time to die. She lunged, jaws open wide, aiming for Lyra's throat. This was it. The final blow. No dodging, no countering, just the end. Lyra drove her fist into Celeste's open mouth. Not a punch. A sacrifice. She shoved her entire arm between those deadly jaws, felt teeth scrape bone, and used her other hand to drive her thumb into the soft tissue behind the wolf's jaw. Celeste gagged, recoiled, tried to bite down. But Lyra's arm was too far back, wedged in a place that prevented the jaws from closing fully. They stood locked like that. Lyra's arm disappearing into a wolf's mouth, both of them bleeding, both of them shaking with pain and exhaustion. Yield, Lyra ground out through clenched teeth, or I rupture your soft palate and we both choke on blood. The arena held its breath. Celeste's eyes met hers, golden, furious, and for the first time, uncertain. Because this should have been impossible. The wolfless girl should have broken minutes ago, should have submitted, should have died, should have done literally anything except stand here with her arm down a wolf's throat, threatening mutual destruction. The trial, someone shouted. Someone stop the trial. But the arbiter did nothing, because by law the fight continued until one party submitted or died. And neither Lyra nor Celeste was doing either. Your choice, Lyra whispered, blood running down her arm. Kill me and die with me, or we both walk away. For an eternity that lasted seconds, Celeste didn't move. Then slowly, her jaws relaxed. She stepped back, letting Lyra's ruined arm slide free, and shifted back to human form. I yield, Celeste said, her voice raw with humiliation. The arena exploded into chaos. Nobles screaming protests, soldiers cheering, the arbiter trying to restore order. Through it all, Lyra stood swaying on her feet, her arm hanging useless, her body a map of damage. She'd survived. Against all odds, all logic, all reason, she'd survived. Her eyes found Ronan's. He was smiling. Not a big smile, just a small curve of his mouth that somehow meant everything. Then her legs gave out, and the world went dark. She woke to pain and the smell of herbs. The castle infirmary was quiet, dim, the only light coming from a single candle near her cot. Every part of her body screamed. She tried to sit up, failed, settled for turning her head. Ronan sat in a chair beside her bed, looking exhausted but alert. "You're awake," he said quietly. "That's good. The healers weren't sure if you'd regain consciousness tonight." "How long?" Her voice came out wrecked. 6 hours since the trial ended. He leaned forward, studied her face. "You have 3 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder that we reset while you were unconscious, 37 stitches across your back and chest, and your arm." He paused. "The healers saved it, but it's going to be weeks before you have full use again." Lyra processed that. "But I'm alive." "Against all probability and common sense, yes, you're alive." "And Celeste?" Nursing her wounded pride in her family's quarters. Her physical injuries were minor, her reputation, however. A grim satisfaction colored Ronan's voice. "The noble families are not pleased that their champion was forced to yield to a wolfless soldier. Some are calling it a fluke. Others are calling it witchcraft. A few, very few, are calling it what it actually was: skill, courage, and absolute refusal to accept defeat." Lyra closed her eyes, felt tears leak out despite herself. "I thought I was going to die." "So did everyone else, including, I suspect, you." Ronan's hand found hers, the undamaged one, and squeezed gently. "But you didn't. You stood. You fought. And you made the entire kingdom watch a wolfless girl bring a noble wolf to her knees. That matters, Lyra. That changes things." "Adrian hasn't left his chambers. He's processing." Ronan's voice went carefully neutral. "I think he's realizing that the woman he thought he knew is far stronger than he gave her credit for, and that he lost something he didn't value properly until it was gone." They sat in silence for a while, Ronan's hand warm in hers, the pain slowly receding under whatever the healers had given her. "What happens now?" Lyra finally asked. Ronan's expression shifted, became harder, more calculating. "Now the real fight begins. You've embarrassed powerful people, Vance, proven that their system isn't as unbreakable as they thought. They're going to come for you, not with claws this time, but with politics, manipulation, and every dirty trick they can manage." "Wonderful. Can't wait." "But here's the thing." Ronan's grip tightened slightly. "You're not alone anymore. You've got the king standing beside you. That means something. That means you're under royal protection, and anyone who wants to hurt you has to go through me first." Lyra opened her eyes, met his gray gaze. Something passed between them, understanding, respect, and that dangerous electric thing she couldn't name but also couldn't ignore. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care this much?" Ronan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, honest in a way she'd never heard from him. "Because you remind me of who I used to be. Before the crown, before the politics, before I learned that caring about things made you vulnerable. You're still brave enough to fight for what you want, consequences be damned. And that—" He paused, something complicated crossing his face. "That's worth protecting." Before Lyra could respond, before she could process what that meant, the infirmary door burst open. Captain Thorne stood in the entrance, his face grim. "Your Majesty, we have a problem. Lady Celeste's family is calling for a formal inquiry into the trial. They're claiming Lyra used illegal tactics, that the arbiter should have stopped the fight, that—" "Let them call for whatever they want," Ronan said, not looking away from Lyra. "I'll handle it." "There's more." Thorne stepped closer, lowered his voice. "There are rumors about you and her, about why you stood as her second, about how much time you've spent together. The court's starting to speculate, and those speculations are damaging." Now Ronan did look at Thorn, and his expression could have frozen fire. Let them speculate. Let them whisper and scheme and waste their breath. I stood as Lyra's second because she earned it. Because she's a better warrior than half the nobles in this castle, wolf or no wolf. And if the court has a problem with that, they can bring it to me directly. Thorn's eyebrows rose. Your Majesty. Dismissed, Captain. It wasn't open for debate. Thorn left, shooting Lyra a look that clearly said, you're in way over your head. He wasn't wrong. Alone again, Lyra found her voice. The rumors. Are they true? Which ones? That this is about more than just protecting a soldier. Ronan stood slowly, moved to the window. His back was to her, silhouetted against the night sky. When I first saw you in the training yard, he said quietly, I thought you were interesting, a puzzle, someone who shouldn't survive but did anyway through sheer stubborn will. Then I got to know you, your mind, your refusal to accept limitations, the way you fight like breathing is a choice you make deliberately every morning. And I realized you weren't just interesting, you were, he paused, dangerous to me, to everything I've carefully built to keep myself safe from feeling too much. Lyra's heart hammered against her broken ribs. I watched my son make promises to you and knew he'd break them. Not from malice, but from weakness. And I told myself I was protecting you from that. But the truth? He turned and his eyes were burning. The truth is I wanted you for myself. I wanted the woman strong enough to stand in an arena and refuse to die. The woman who looked at a wolf's jaws and chose to fight instead of submit. Ronan, I know the timing's shit, he continued, something almost desperate creeping into his voice. I know you're broken and bleeding and probably in no state to hear this. But after watching you almost die today, I can't keep pretending I don't. Stop, Lyra said softly. He stopped. Come here. Ronan moved back to her bedside, sat on the edge of the cot. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the fear he'd been hiding behind royal composure. I don't know what this is, Lyra said honestly. Between us, it's too fast, too complicated, and probably completely insane. Agreed. But I know that when I thought I was going to die out there, you were the face I looked for. You were the person I trusted to witness it, to make it mean something. She reached up with her good hand, touched his scarred knuckles. So whatever this is, whatever's happening, I'm not running from it. Not anymore. Ronan's breath caught. Then carefully, so carefully, mindful of her injuries, he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't Adrian's bright, reckless kiss. It was dark, fierce, tasting of blood and desperation and truth. It was a king letting his guard drop, a soldier claiming something for herself, two broken people finding unexpected wholeness in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Ronan rested his forehead against hers. Kingdom's going to lose its mind, he murmured. Let it. My son is going to be devastated. He'll recover. The political fallout will be catastrophic. Then we'll deal with it. Lyra's voice was steady despite the chaos she knew was coming. Together. Ronan's smile was small, genuine, and absolutely devastating. Together. Outside, the castle slept uneasily, unaware that everything had just shifted, that the wolfless soldier and the cold king had just made a choice that would change the kingdom forever. And somewhere in the darkness, Lady Celeste plotted her revenge. And somewhere in the darkness, Lady Celeste plotted her revenge. The first strike came 3 days later, when Lyra could finally walk without gasping. She was making her way through the castle corridors, slowly, carefully, still wrapped in bandages that pulled with every movement, when she heard the whispers. Not the usual castle gossip, but something sharper, more vicious. Sleeping with him, obviously. Manipulated the trial somehow. Witchcraft. Has to be. Lyra stopped outside the servants' hall, pressed herself against the wall. Her ribs screamed in protest, but she ignored them. My lady says it's disgusting, a young maid was saying, her voice carrying through the half-open door. A wolfless nobody seducing the king right under the prince's nose. It's unnatural. Heard she used dark magic in the arena too, another voice added. How else could she have survived? Lady Celeste is twice her size and pure bloodline. No way a human beats that without cheating. Well, she won't get away with it. Lady Celeste's family is demanding a formal inquiry. They're calling for her execution. Lyra moved away before she could hear more. Her hands were shaking, though whether from rage or fear she couldn't tell. She found Ronan in the war room, surrounded by maps and reports. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting immediately from kingly authority to concern. You should be resting. I should be a lot of things. Lyra closed the door behind her, leaned against it. The servants are saying I'm a witch, that I seduced you, that I cheated in the trial and deserve execution. Ronan's jaw tightened. I'm aware. Celeste's family has been spreading rumors systematically. They're trying to turn public opinion against you before the inquiry. What inquiry? The council called for one this morning. Formal investigation into the trial's legitimacy. He stood, moved around the desk. They're using legal language, but what they really want is to retry you. Find some technicality that proves you broke the rules, invalidate your survival, and execute me for cheating, Lyra finished. Her voice came out flat, dead. So I survived the wolf just to die to politics. No, Ronan's voice went hard as steel. You're not going to die. I won't allow it. You can't just... I'm the king. I can do whatever the fuck I want. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his scarred hands. Listen to me. They're scared. You prove something they can't afford to have proven, that their system is arbitrary, that power isn't just about bloodlines and wolves. So they're going to throw everything they have at discrediting you, making you into a villain, a cheat, anything except what you actually are, which is a woman who refused to die when she was supposed to. His thumb traced her cheekbone gently. That terrifies them, because if you can do it, others might try. The whole carefully constructed hierarchy starts to crack. Lyra leaned into his touch despite herself. Your advisors must be losing their minds. The king defending a wolfless soldier against noble families. They are, I don't care. Ronan's eyes burned into hers. I've spent 20 years playing their games, making calculated decisions, sacrificing what I wanted for political stability. I'm done. You've reminded me that some things are worth fighting for, consequences be damned. The words should have been romantic. Instead, they filled Lyra with dread. Ronan, if you push too hard, if you make this about us instead of about the trial's legitimacy, they'll use it against both of us. They'll say I manipulated you, that you're compromised, that let them say it. You could lose your throne. I could lose you. His voice cracked slightly. And I've recently discovered that scares me more. Before Lyra could respond, the door opened. Captain Thorne stood there, his face grim. Your Majesty, the council's convening early. They're demanding your presence, and hers. He jerked his chin toward Lyra. Now. The council chamber was an amphitheater of judgment, tiered seating arranged in a half circle, all eyes focused on the floor where the accused would stand. Every major noble family was represented. The High families sat in the front rows, Silvercrest, Blackwood, Thornridge, their faces masks of aristocratic contempt. Lady Celeste sat beside her father, Lord Silvercrest, looking perfect despite her recent defeat. She'd transformed her loss into theater, playing the wounded innocent with practiced ease. Lyra stood in the center of the floor, feeling exposed. Her bandages were visible beneath her uniform, her arms still splinted. She looked like what she was, someone barely recovered from nearly dying. Ronan sat in the king's seat, elevated above the council, but somehow feeling more isolated than powerful. Adrian was conspicuously absent. This inquiry, Lord Silvercrest began, his voice carrying the weight of old money and older bloodlines, has been called to investigate irregularities in the trial between my daughter and the soldier, Lyra Vance. The pause before soldier was deliberate, dismissive. We have testimony from multiple witnesses, Silvercrest continued, that Vance employed illegal tactics, the sand throwing, the insertion of her limb into my daughter's mouth in a manner clearly designed to cause internal damage. These are not honorable combat techniques. They're street fighting tricks that have no place in a formal trial. She fought to survive, Ronan said, his voice cutting through the chamber, which is the entire point of a trial. Or have we changed the rules to require that the wolfless simply accept death gracefully? The rules require honor, Your Majesty, something your protege clearly lacks. The emphasis on protege made it sound dirty. I fought within the law, Lyra said, finding her voice. The arbiter never stopped the match, never called a foul. I used the tools available to me against an opponent with every possible advantage. If that's dishonorable, then maybe your definition of honor is just code for knowing your place. The chamber erupted. Nobles shouting, guards moving forward, chaos threatening to overwhelm the proceedings. Order! Ronan's voice cracked like a whip. This is a council inquiry, not a mob. Everyone will speak in turn or leave. Reluctantly, the noise subsided. Lord Blackwood, an ancient wolf with silver fur and cunning eyes, stood slowly. Your Majesty, with respect, this inquiry isn't really about the trial's technicalities. We all know Vance survived through unconventional means. What concerns us is what came after. Lyra's stomach dropped. Specifically, Blackwood continued, the rumors regarding your relationship with the accused, the unprecedented decision to stand as her second, the private training sessions, the fact that you've been seen entering her quarters after dark. Careful, Ronan said softly, but there was murder in his voice. And the question of whether your judgment regarding this situation has been compromised by personal feelings that a king cannot afford to have. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Are you suggesting, Ronan said slowly, that I am unfit to rule because I showed kindness to a soldier who earned it? We're suggesting, Lady Thornridge interjected, her voice silk over steel, that your recent decisions have been uncharacteristic, emotional, and that perhaps the source of that emotion is standing in front of us, looking conveniently helpless. Lyra felt rage boil up her throat. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask for the prince's attention, for the trial, for... Yet you benefited from all of it. Celeste spoke for the first time, her voice carrying false sympathy. Poor wolfless Lyra, getting attention from not one but two members of the royal family. How fortunate for you. How very convenient. You challenged me, Lyra shot back. You started this. Because you were reaching above your station, trying to claim what belonged to wolves, to nobility, to people who actually matter in this kingdom. Celeste stood, moved to the center of the floor. She was healed, beautiful, every inch the perfect noble daughter. You're a parasite, Vance, latching onto power wherever you can find it. First Adrian, now the king. How long before you try for the throne itself? That's enough, Ronan snapped. Is it? Celeste turned to face him. Because from where we're standing, Your Majesty, it looks like you've been bewitched. There's no other explanation for why you'd risk political chaos to defend someone so clearly beneath your notice. You want another explanation? Ronan stood, and the room went silent. Try this one. Lyra Vance has more honor in her broken body than most of you have in your entire bloodlines. She's fought for every scrap of respect while you've coasted on family names and genetics. She stood in that arena and refused to quit when any rational person would have, and she did it without crying to Daddy about how unfair life is. The insult was directed at Celeste, but it hit half the chamber. So yes, Ronan continued, his voice carrying absolute authority, I defended her. I stand with her. And if this council has a problem with that, you can bring it to a formal vote of no confidence. See how that works out for you. Lord Silvercrest's face went red. You're threatening the council? Over a wolfless nobody? I'm reminding the council that I'm still the king, and the king can choose his allies without needing your permission. Even allies who share his bed? Lady Thornridge's voice was poison sweet. The chamber exploded again. Lyra felt the words like a physical blow. This was it, the moment where everything fell apart. Where Ronan's defense of her became proof of impropriety, where her survival got twisted into seduction and manipulation. I've never... she started. Of course you have, Celeste interrupted. Why else would he risk everything? You're clearly using him, just like you tried to use Adrian. It's what parasites do. That's a lie. Is it? Then explain the private meetings, the training sessions, the fact that he's been spending more time with you than governing the kingdom. Celeste moved closer, lowered her voice just enough to seem reasonable. We're not monsters, Vance. We understand that you saw an opportunity and took it. That's survival. But you can't expect us to let you destroy our kingdom's leadership in the process. Lyra's mind raced. Every defense sounded like admission. Every protestation would be twisted. They'd built a perfect trap. Make her relationship with Ronan the issue, paint her as a manipulator, and remove her from the board entirely. The solution is simple, Lord Blackwood said. Vance leaves the castle, renounces any claim to royal attention or protection, goes back to whatever border village spawned her. In return, we drop the inquiry and forget this unfortunate episode ever happened. No, Ronan said immediately. Your Majesty, what? I said no, Lyra stays, under royal protection, as a member of my personal guard. And if anyone in this chamber has a problem with that, they can challenge me directly. The offer hung in the air. Challenging a king was technically legal, but practically suicide. Ronan was the strongest wolf in the kingdom, a veteran of countless battles. Nobody was stupid enough to, I'll challenge her. Everyone turned. Adrian stood in the chamber doorway, looking like death's prettier brother. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed, but his voice was steady. The council wants proof that Lyra hasn't manipulated the royal family, Adrian continued, walking down the steps toward the floor. Fine. Let her face one more trial, me against her. If she wins, her honor is proven and this ends. If she loses, he paused, then she accepts exile and we all move on. Lyra felt the ground tilt. Adrian, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. He stopped a few feet away and the pain in his eyes was real. I let you down, Lyra. I made promises and hid when they mattered. But I can do this. I can give you a chance to prove yourself one final time. And if you survive me, his voice cracked slightly, then even these bastards will have to accept that you earned your place. It was a trap. It had to be. Adrian angry, drunk, heartbroken, he'd be dangerous in ways Celeste hadn't been. And Lyra was still healing, still broken from the first trial. This is insane, Ronan said, but his voice lacked its usual command. Because Adrian had found the one move that cornered everyone. Refuse the challenge and prove the accusations true. That Lyra needed royal protection because she couldn't stand on her own. Accept it and risk her life again for the entertainment of people who wanted her dead. The council accepts Prince Adrian's challenge, Lord Silvercrest said quickly, before anyone could object. 3 days hence, same arena, same rules, combat until submission or no. Ronan's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. If this happens, it happens under my conditions. No trial to death. First blood and submission only. The fight stops when I say it stops, and there will be observers from the neutral border guards, not just nobles with stakes in the outcome. Agreed, Adrian said before the council could argue. Lyra stared at him, trying to understand. Was this mercy, punishment, some twisted attempt to prove himself? I need to speak with her, Adrian said quietly, alone, before the trial. Absolutely not, Ronan started. Please. Adrian met his father's eyes. I think I've earned 5 minutes to say goodbye. The word goodbye hung heavy between them. Ronan looked at Lyra. She nodded, not trusting her voice. 5 minutes, Ronan said. In the small council room, with guards outside. The small council room felt like a cage. Adrian paced while Lyra sat, her ribs protesting even that small movement. They didn't speak for the first minute, just 2 people drowning in the wreckage of what might have been. I'm sorry, Adrian finally said, for all of it, for being weak when you needed strength, for hiding when I should have fought, for loving you badly instead of well. Then why challenge me? Lyra's voice came out more tired than angry. Why give them another chance to kill me? Because this way, you have a chance. Adrian stopped pacing, faced her. If you refuse, they'll find some other way to remove you. False charges, an arranged accident, something that doesn't give you even the illusion of control. This way, you fight, and if anyone can survive the impossible twice, he smiled sadly. It's you. I'm still healing. You know that. You're wolf-blessed, and I can barely walk without my ribs shifting. I know. Then you're sending me to die. No. Adrian moved closer, knelt in front of her chair. I'm sending you to fight. There's a difference. And Lyra, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to give you a chance to prove yourself one last time. After that, he swallowed hard. After that, you'll be free. Of me. Of these expectations. Of all the bullshit that comes from being anywhere near the royal family. Lyra studied his face, trying to find the trap. You're going to throw the fight. I'm going to fight. Hard enough that it looks real, but I'm not going to destroy you. His voice dropped to a whisper. I failed you once. I won't fail you again by killing you to save my pride. Adrian, let me do this, he interrupted. Let me give you something real instead of just pretty promises. Let me be brave enough, just once, to stand up for you even if it costs me everything. The tragedy was that he meant it. Adrian wasn't scheming or lying. He was just a man trying desperately to fix a situation he'd helped create, using the only tool he had left, himself. They'll destroy you too, Lyra said quietly. If you lose to me, if the kingdom sees you defeated by a wolfless soldier, your reputation, fuck my reputation. Adrian laughed bitterly. It's already ruined. The prince who couldn't keep his promises, who hid while the woman he claimed to love fought for her life. That's my legacy now. At least this way I can make it count for something. Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. I wish things had been different. Me too. Adrian stood, pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste, final. But they weren't. And now we deal with what is instead of what we wanted. He moved toward the door, paused. For what it's worth, I think my father's good for you. He's strong enough to stand with you instead of just in front of you. That's what you deserve. Then he was gone, leaving Lyra alone with her racing thoughts and the certainty that she was about to walk into something even more dangerous than Celeste's claws. The next 3 days were a nightmare of preparation and politics. Ronan threw himself into training her despite her protests, pushing her healing body further than the healers recommended. But he was careful too, never hitting her damaged ribs, focusing on speed and evasion rather than power. Adrian's fast, he said during one session, circling her with predatory focus. Faster than Celeste. But he's not vicious, he fights clean, honorable. That's his weakness. You want me to fight dirty again. I want you to fight smart. Ronan feinted left, she dodged right. He'll come at you with guilt, with the memory of what you had. Use that. Keep him off balance emotionally, and you negate his physical advantages. That feels wrong. Survival often does. He stopped circling, met her eyes. I know you cared about him, maybe still do, but he put you in this position, Lyra. Forced another trial when you're barely healed. Whatever his intentions, the result is the same, you fighting for your life while nobles bet on how you'll die. He said he'd throw the fight. And you believe him? Did she? Lyra thought about Adrian's tear-stained face, his desperate need to mean something. I believe he wants to, but I also know that once the fighting starts, once his wolf takes over, intentions don't matter, instinct does. Ronan nodded slowly. Smart girl. So prepare for him at full strength. Anything less, and you're dead. They trained until her body gave out, then trained some more. Each session left her gasping, crying from pain she couldn't afford to show in public. But each session also taught her something new. How to redirect a wolf's momentum, where to strike to cause maximum disorientation, how to survive when survival should be impossible. You're getting better, Ronan said on the second evening, watching her work through combat forms. Not good enough to win, maybe, but better. Inspiring as always. I'm not here to inspire you. He moved behind her, adjusted her stance with hands that lingered just slightly too long. I'm here to keep you alive. Everything else is secondary. Lyra leaned back against his chest, let herself have one moment of weakness. What if I lose? You won't. But if I do, then I invoke royal authority and stop the fight before it goes too far. Ronan's arms came around her carefully, mindful of her injuries. And then we deal with the political fallout together. You're not facing this alone, Lyra. Not anymore. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground was about to give way. The night before the second trial, Lyra couldn't sleep. She stood in the castle's highest tower, the same place Ronan had taken her before, when the world had seemed slightly less doomed. The stars were hidden by clouds, the air heavy with approaching rain. Can't sleep either? She turned. Ronan stood in the tower doorway, dressed simply, looking as exhausted as she felt. Thought I'd enjoy the view one last time, she said. Just in case. Don't talk like that. Why not? We both know the odds are shit. Lyra turned back to the darkness. I survived Celeste because I got lucky. Lightning doesn't strike twice. You survived Celeste because you're a fighter. Ronan moved to stand beside her. And because you refused to accept that you were supposed to die. That's not luck, Lyra. That's will. Will doesn't stop claws. No, but it keeps you standing when everything says to fall down. That matters more than people think. He was quiet for a moment. I have something for you, for tomorrow. He pulled out a small blade, barely 6 inches long, the metal dark and etched with strange symbols. It's an old ceremonial knife, Ronan explained, from before trials became formal when they were actual survival tests. You're allowed one small weapon in addition to your body. Most people don't bother because it's seen as admission of weakness. But I don't give a damn about tradition. Lyra took the knife, felt its weight. This is breaking all kinds of customs. Good. Customs are part of why you're in this mess. His hand covered hers around the blade. Use it if you have to. No honor in dying because you played by rules designed to kill you. She looked up at him, this king who'd somehow become the thing she cared most about protecting. If I die tomorrow, Lyra, if I die, she continued firmly, don't let them make it meaningless. Don't let the council turn it into proof that wolfless people should know their place. Make it matter. If you die tomorrow, Ronan said, his voice raw, I'm burning the entire goddamn system down. Starting with the noble families who pushed for this. I will make them regret forcing this trial so thoroughly that their grandchildren will still be paying for it. I don't care if it's smart or strategic or good for the kingdom. He pulled her closer, careful of her injuries. I care about you. And if I lose you because of their political games, there will be consequences. Final ones. Lyra kissed him then, desperate, afraid, but also certain. Because whatever happened tomorrow, she wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted to know what it felt like to be chosen by someone strong enough to stand beside her in the fire. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ronan rested his forehead against hers. Survive, he whispered. Whatever it costs. However you have to do it. Just survive. I'll try. Not good enough. Promise me. Lyra thought about the arena, about Adrian's guilt and the noble's hunger for her death, about the impossibility of what he was asking. I promise, she lied, and hoped he believed it. Pasum. Dawn came like a sentencing. The arena was even more packed than last time. Apparently watching a prince fight his former love was peak entertainment. The crowd's energy felt different too. More vicious, more eager. They wanted blood, wanted drama, wanted to see the wolfless girl finally get what was coming to her. Lyra stood in her corner, the ceremonial knife hidden against her spine, and tried to keep her breathing steady. Her ribs were taped tight. Her arm was still weak, but functional. She'd pushed the healing as far as it would go. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough. Ronan stood beside her a second again, his face unreadable to everyone except her. She could see the fear under the royal mask, the barely controlled violence in the way his hands flexed. Remember, he said quietly, speed over power. Keep him off balance. And if it goes wrong, I know. Submit before he kills me. No. Ronan turned her to face him. If it goes wrong, you use that knife and you fight like hell. Submission means exile. Exile means I can't protect you, so you win or you die fighting, but you don't surrender. Understood? Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice. Across the arena, Adrian entered in his wolf form. He was smaller than Celeste, but somehow more terrifying, sleek, golden-furred, with eyes that held human intelligence and animal instinct in equal measure. He looked at Lyra, and she saw the apology there. The regret. The determination to do this one thing right, even if it destroyed him. The Arbiter stepped forward, same ancient wolf as before. This trial is witnessed by the court and sanctioned by law. Prince Adrian fights to defend the crown's honor against accusations of manipulation. Lyra Vance fights to prove her worth and loyalty. Combat continues until first blood and submission, or until the king calls cessation. Are both parties prepared? Adrian's answering howl was sad, final. "I'm ready," Lyra said. "Then begin." Adrian didn't explode into motion like Celeste had. He approached slowly, deliberately, giving Lyra time to react. Part of her wanted to scream at him, "Stop being noble. Stop making this easier. Just finish it." But she couldn't waste the opening. Lyra moved left, testing his reaction time. Adrian tracked her easily, his wolf eyes glowing amber. When she feinted right, he didn't fall for it, just kept that steady advance, backing her toward the arena wall. "I don't want to hurt you," Adrian's voice came out distorted through his wolf form. "But I need this to look real, so I'm sorry for what comes next." He lunged. Lyra rolled under his strike, came up with the ceremonial knife already in hand. The blade bit into Adrian's shoulder, not deep, just enough to draw first blood. The crowd gasped, but first blood didn't end the fight. Not this time. Adrian spun, faster than she expected, his claws raking across her already damaged ribs. Lyra screamed, felt something tear loose inside her chest. Blood bloomed across her bandages, hot and immediate. "Yield," Adrian said, and the desperation in his voice was real. "Please, Lyra, just yield." "No!" She came at him again, knife flashing. Adrian dodged, but she'd been counting on that. Her real attack was the knee she drove into his midsection while he was off balance. Adrian went down hard, wheezing. The crowd was screaming now. This wasn't supposed to happen. The wolfless girl wasn't supposed to be winning. Lyra pressed her advantage, drove the knife toward Adrian's throat. He caught her wrist at the last second, his strength overwhelming even injured. They grappled, face to face, wolf and human. Former lovers turned enemies by forces neither had chosen. "Why won't you quit?" Adrian gasped. "Because quitting means losing everything." Lyra drove her head forward, smashed her forehead into Adrian's snout. He yelped, released her. She rolled away, came up coughing blood. Her ribs were definitely broken again. Maybe worse. "Lyra, stop!" Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. "That's enough!" But it wasn't. Because as Lyra struggled to her feet, she saw Lord Silvercrest in the stands making a subtle gesture, saw Celeste smile, and saw Adrian's eyes flash, not amber, but gold. The wrong kind of gold. "Adrian?" Lyra's voice came out uncertain. The prince lunged at her with a speed and violence he hadn't shown yet. This wasn't the careful fighting from before. This was a wolf trying to kill. Lyra barely dodged, felt claws tear through her shoulder. She stabbed blindly, felt the knife sink into flesh. Adrian howled, rage, not pain, and came at her again. "Something's wrong," Ronan was shouting. "Stop the fight! Stop it now!" But the Arbiter did nothing, just watched as Adrian attacked with supernatural fury, as Lyra fought desperately to survive against someone who'd promised to protect her. In the stands, Celeste was laughing. Lyra understood then. The drink Adrian had been given before the fight. The subtle potion mixed in, designed to override control, to turn a wolf into a mindless killer. They'd sabotaged him, turned him into the weapon that would finally destroy her while looking like tragic accident. "Adrian!" She screamed his name, trying to reach the human buried under pharmaceutical rage. "Fight it! You're stronger than this!" But Adrian wasn't Adrian anymore. He was just beast, claws and teeth, and the certainty of her death. Lyra made a choice. She dropped the knife, raised her hands in surrender, and when Adrian lunged for her throat, she didn't dodge, just closed her eyes and waited for... The impact never came. Lyra opened her eyes to see Ronan in wolf form, massive, silver-furred, absolutely terrifying, standing between her and Adrian. He'd moved faster than should be possible, transformed mid-leap, and caught Adrian's attack with his own body. Father and son crashed together with earth-shaking force. The arena went silent. A king wasn't supposed to intervene. The trial had rules, protocols. By stepping into the combat directly, Ronan had just broken every law that governed royal conduct. "Stand down!" Ronan's voice boomed across the arena, amplified by his wolf form. "I'm calling cessation. The trial is over." "You can't," Lord Silvercrest started. "I can and I am." Ronan didn't take his eyes off Adrian, who was struggling against some inner war, the potion versus his own will. "My son has been poisoned, drugged to kill without consent. This trial is invalidated and anyone involved in the poisoning will be executed for treason." The nobles erupted into chaos, but Ronan ignored them, turned to Lyra. Can you walk? She nodded, even though her legs were shaking and blood was pooling around her feet. Then come here. Now. Lyra stumbled forward. Ronan shifted back to human form. He was bleeding from where Adrian's claws had caught him and caught her before she collapsed. I've got you, he murmured. You're safe now. But she wasn't. None of them were. Because Lord Silvercrest was standing, his face purple with rage. This is treason. You can't simply invalidate a sanctioned trial because you don't like the outcome. I can when the trial was rigged. Ronan's voice carried absolute authority. And I have. The inquiry into Lyra Vance is closed. She is under permanent royal protection. And anyone who challenges that will answer to me directly. The council will never... The council, Ronan interrupted, his eyes blazing, can accept my decree or find a new king. Those are the options. Choose wisely. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, something began to happen. Lyra felt it before she understood it, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with her injuries, a power that felt both foreign and familiar. Ronan, she whispered, something's wrong. What is it? But she couldn't answer, because the warmth was spreading, growing, becoming heat that burned through her veins like liquid fire. Her vision blurred. Her bones felt like they were cracking, reshaping, and somewhere deep inside, something that had been sleeping her entire life finally woke up. Lyra's scream tore across the arena as her body began to change, bones breaking and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding. The pain was indescribable, beyond anything she'd experienced in either trial. No, someone in the crowd whispered. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible. It was happening. Lyra Vance, wolfless outcast, worthless soldier, the girl who'd survived on skill alone, was shifting. Her wolf, dormant for 23 years, was finally emerging. And when the transformation completed, when she stood on 4 legs instead of 2, the entire arena went silent with shock. Because Lyra's wolf wasn't small or weak or damaged by years of dormancy. It was massive, ancient, with fur the color of midnight and eyes that burned silver white, the eyes of an apex bloodline. A dominant line thought, extinct for 3 generations. Lyra threw back her head and howled, rage, triumph, and power that made every wolf in the arena instinctively lower their heads in submission. Including, she noticed distantly, King Ronan himself. The girl they'd tried to kill, tried to break, tried to force into knowing her place, had just revealed herself as the most powerful wolf in the kingdom. And in the stands, Lady Celeste's face had gone white as death. The world came back to Lyra in fragments, sound first, the gasps and whispers of the crowd like waves breaking against stone. Then sensation, the strange newness of 4 legs instead of 2, muscles that moved with power she'd never known. Finally sight, but different, sharper, colors shifted, everything somehow more vivid and immediate. She was looking at the arena floor from a height that shouldn't be possible, looking at Ronan, still in his silver wolf form, his head lowered in a posture that her new instincts recognized as submission. The king was bowing to her. Panic surged through Lyra's chest. She tried to shift back, to return to human form, but nothing happened. Her wolf was in control now, riding high on some instinct she didn't understand, and it absolutely refused to back down. Shift back, Ronan said quietly, his voice carrying that strange dual quality of wolf speech, words that were somehow both sound and something deeper. Lyra, you need to shift back before... A howl cut him off, pure primal challenge. Lady Celeste stood in the arena entrance, her silver wolf form bristling with rage and humiliation. Behind her, Lord Silvercrest and half a dozen other nobles had shifted as well, their wolves forming a loose pack. Witchcraft, Celeste snarled, her words distorted but understandable. She's used dark magic to fake a transformation. No wolf stays dormant that long and then awakens as apex. It's impossible. Is it? Ronan moved carefully between Lyra and the growing pack. Or is it just inconvenient for your family's claims to superiority? Father, Celeste snapped, tell him, tell the entire court that this is fraud, that she's... Enough! The ancient arbiter's voice cut through the chaos. He'd shifted to his own wolf form, white as snow, Smaller than most, but radiating an authority that came from decades of law and tradition. I will examine the girl's wolf. If it is false, we will know. He approached slowly, giving Lyra space to react. Her wolf wanted to attack, to defend, but some thread of human consciousness held it back. This was the arbiter. Attacking him would be suicide. The ancient wolf circled her, studying with eyes that had seen 3 generations of nobility. He sniffed at her midnight fur, examined the way she held herself, the silver white of her eyes. The inspection felt invasive, violating, but Lyra forced herself to stay still. Finally, the arbiter stepped back. "This is no illusion," he said clearly. "No potion or spell can create a wolf form from nothing. This transformation is real, and this bloodline—" He paused, and something like awe entered his voice. "This is Shadowcrest, ancient apex line, thought extinct since the Purge." The arena erupted into chaos. Shadowcrest. The name hit Lyra like a physical blow. She'd heard stories, whispered tales of the bloodline that had ruled before Ronan's family, before the current power structure. They'd been hunted down, destroyed in a bloody coup 3 generations back for being too powerful, too dangerous. Apparently they'd missed one. "This proves nothing," Lord Silvercrest shouted over the crowd's roar. "Shadowcrest or not, she's still spent her entire life wolfless. She's still more powerful than your entire family combined." Ronan interrupted, his voice carrying absolute conviction. "Which is what you're really afraid of. Not that she's a fraud, that she's legitimate, and you've spent months trying to kill someone with more right to authority than half this court. That's treason. That's truth." Ronan shifted back to human form, the transformation smooth, controlled. He approached Lyra carefully, unafraid despite her massive wolf size. "Lyra, can you hear me in there?" She tried to nod. It came out as a jerky movement that probably looked deranged. "I need you to shift back. I know it's hard the first time. The wolf doesn't want to give up control, but you need to be human for what comes next." What came next, Lyra wanted to ask, but her wolf had no words. Just instinct, power, and a burning need to prove dominance over everyone who'd ever looked down on her. Ronan reached out slowly, placed his hand on her massive head. "Come back to me. Please. Don't let the wolf's first taste of freedom be the thing that defines you." The touch anchored her, gave her something human to focus on. Lyra closed her silver white eyes, searched inside herself for the woman she'd been minutes ago, and pulled. The shift back was agony, bones cracking, muscles tearing, everything that had just grown now shrinking again. She collapsed on the arena floor naked except for shredded clothing, gasping, shaking, more vulnerable than she'd been even during the trials. Ronan stripped off his coat, wrapped it around her shoulders. "I've got you. You're okay." That was... Lyra's voice came out wrecked. "What the hell was that?" "Your wolf, finally awake after 23 years of dormancy." He pulled her upright, supported her weight easily. "And apparently you're descended from the most powerful bloodline in the kingdom's history, so that's going to complicate things." Hysterical laughter bubbled up Lyra's throat. "Complicate? I just turned into a nightmare wolf in front of the entire court and made the king bow. I think we're past complicated." "Fair point." Ronan turned to face the arena, his arm still around Lyra's shoulders. "This trial is over. Lyra Vance has proven beyond any doubt that she belongs in this kingdom. Not as a soldier, not as a charity case, but as Apex. The inquiry is closed. The challenges are done, and anyone who wants to contest that can take it up with her wolf." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then, slowly, Captain Thorne stepped forward from the guard contingent. He dropped to one knee, head bowed. "My loyalty to the Apex bloodline." The words were formal, ancient, the traditional pledge to dominant wolves. One by one, other soldiers followed. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to show that Lyra had support beyond just the king. The noble families remained standing, their faces ranging from shock to fury to calculation. They were already planning, already figuring out how to spin this new development to their advantage. All except Celeste. She stood alone in human form now, her silver hair disheveled, her perfect face twisted with something beyond rage. "This isn't over," she said quietly, but her voice carried across the silent arena. "Shadowcrest bloodline or not, you're still the girl who took what was mine, who made me a laughingstock. I will destroy you for that, Vance. Count on it. Looking forward to it, Lyra said, and meant it, because now, finally, she had the power to fight back on equal terms. Ronan guided her out of the arena before anyone could object, through corridors that emptied as they approached, servants and soldiers scattering before the woman who'd just revealed herself as something legendary. They ended up in Ronan's private chambers, a risk, given the rumors, but Lyra was barely conscious and covered in her own blood. Modesty could wait. Sit, Ronan commanded, pushing her toward a chair near the fire. I'm getting the healers. No. Lyra caught his wrist. No healers. Not yet. I need to understand what just happened. Ronan looked like he wanted to argue, then nodded. He poured water from a pitcher, brought it to her along with clean bandages. While he worked on the worst of her injuries, the reopened ribs, the claw marks from Adrian, he talked. The Shadowcrest line was the original ruling family, he said, his hands gentle despite the clinical efficiency. 3 generations ago, they were overthrown in what history calls the Reformation, but was really just a bloody coup. My grandfather led it, claimed they were too dangerous to rule, that their power was unstable. Were they? Yes, but also no. Ronan tied off a bandage, moved to the next wound. They were dangerous because they were dominant. Other wolves couldn't help but submit to them. That kind of power terrifies people, makes them do stupid things like commit genocide to feel safe. Lyra processed that. So your family murdered mine? Essentially, yes. He didn't flinch from it. Though we thought we got them all. Clearly we missed someone in your bloodline. My parents never said anything, never even hinted. They probably didn't know. If your wolf stayed dormant, if you showed no signs of power, they might have thought the bloodline had been diluted. That you were just unlucky. Unlucky? Lyra laughed bitterly. I spent my entire life thinking I was broken, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, and all along I was just, late to bloom? Your wolf needed a trigger. Ronan sat back, studying her face. Extreme stress, mortal danger, a bond that ran deep enough to wake what was sleeping. I'm guessing today provided all 3. A bond. He meant their connection, whatever this thing was between them that had grown from respect into something far more dangerous. What happens now? Lyra asked quietly. I'm Shadowcrest. You're the grandson of the man who destroyed my family. How does that work? Honestly? I have no idea. Ronan reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. But I know I'm not letting you go. Not after everything we've fought through. If that makes me a traitor to my family's legacy, so be it. The words should have been romantic. Instead, they filled Lyra with dread. Because this wasn't just about them anymore. This was about bloodlines, power, the entire structure of the kingdom's hierarchy. The nobles will use this against you, she said. They'll say you're choosing me because of what I am now, not who I was. That you're consolidating power. Let them. Ronan's voice went hard. I'm tired of playing their games, Lyra. Tired of sacrificing what I want for political stability that's really just maintaining their stranglehold on power. You awakening as Apex doesn't change how I feel. It just means you can finally stand beside me as an equal instead of needing my protection. I liked needing your protection, Lyra admitted. Made me feel less alone. You'll never be alone again. He pulled her closer, mindful of her injuries. I promise you that. Wolf or no wolf, Shadowcrest or common blood, you're mine and I'm yours. Everything else is just details. Someone knocked on the door, sharp, urgent. Your Majesty, the Council is demanding an emergency session. They want answers about the Shadowcrest revelation. Ronan sighed. Of course they do. Tell them to wait. They're saying if you don't come now, they'll convene without you. Let them try. He raised his voice so it carried through the door. I'll address the council when I'm ready. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly. Otherwise, they can sit quietly and wait like civilized people. The footsteps retreated quickly. You're going to start a civil war, Lyra said, but without heat. Only if they're stupid enough to push for one. Ronan helped her stand, guided her toward a side room. Come on. You need rest, food, and a chance to process everything without nobles demanding explanations. I need to see Adrian. That stopped Ronan cold. Why? Because he was drugged. Used as a weapon against me. That's not his fault, Ronan, and he needs to know I don't blame him. He challenged you to another trial, to give me a way out. Lyra touched Ronan's face gently. I know you're angry at him. I understand why. But he's your son, and he tried, in his own broken way, to do the right thing. That deserves acknowledgement. Ronan was quiet for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. Finally, he nodded. After you rest, and I'm coming with you. Adrian was in the castle infirmary, sedated while healers worked to purge the poison from his system. He looked terrible, pale, sweating, occasionally jerking as his body fought the drug's lingering effects. How bad is it? Lyra asked the head healer, an ancient woman named Maris. The poison was designed to trigger berserker rage, Maris said without looking up from her work. Overrides the human consciousness, turns the wolf into a mindless killer. He'll survive, but the psychological effects... She trailed off significantly. He'll blame himself, Ronan said quietly, even though it wasn't his fault. Of course he will. He's your son. Maris finally looked up, her eyes sharp. And speaking of family complications, you, she pointed at Lyra. Sit down. Let me look at you properly. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your bandages and you just had your first shift. Sit down. Lyra sat. Maris's examination was thorough, professional, and deeply uncomfortable. She poked at Lyra's ribs, examined the claw marks, checked her healing arm with hands that had seen everything. You're lucky, she finally announced. The shift healed some of your injuries, accelerated the process. Your ribs are still cracked, but they'll mend faster now. Same with everything else. Being Apex has advantages. Like terrifying everyone who looks at me. Like not dying when you should have. Maris packed up her supplies. Rest. Eat red meat. Your wolf needs protein after a first shift. And stay away from stressful situations for at least a week. That's going to be difficult given the council wants my head on a pike. Then put their heads on pikes first. You're Apex. Act like it. Maris swept out of the infirmary, leaving Lyra and Ronan alone with the sedated prince. She's terrifying, Lyra said. She's been castle healer for 40 years. Nothing scares her anymore. Ronan moved to Adrian's bedside, looked down at his son with complicated emotions playing across his face. He looks young when he's asleep. Easy to forget he's old enough to make terrible decisions. He was trying to help. He was trying to fix his guilt by risking your life. Again, Ronan's voice was hard. I know you want to forgive him. That's who you are. But he put you in danger, Lyra. Multiple times. That's not love. That's selfishness wrapped in noble intentions. And what's this? Lyra gestured between them. A king claiming a shadow crest? That's not politically motivated at all. That's me choosing the woman I... Ronan stopped, jaw tightening. That's different. How? Because I'm not asking you to die for my conscience. I'm asking you to live with me despite every rational reason not to. He turned to face her fully. There's a difference between love that consumes and love that sustains. Adrian's was the first. I'm offering the second, if you want it. Lyra's heart hammered against her cracked ribs. This was it, the moment where she had to decide what kind of future she wanted. Safety with a man who'd proven himself capable of standing beside her, or the ghost of what might have been with someone who'd meant well, but failed when it mattered. I want it, she said quietly. I want you. Even though it's insane and complicated and probably going to cause a war. Then you have me. Ronan crossed to her, pulled her into a kiss that was both gentle and possessive. For as long as you'll tolerate my company. Your Majesty? Captain Thorne's voice came from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. They pulled apart. Ronan's expression shifted immediately back to king mode. What kind of situation? The council's convened without you. They're voting on something. Lord Silvercrest won't say what, but it's big. And they've got guards preventing anyone from entering the chamber. Thorne's face was grim. Whatever they're planning, they don't want you there to stop it. Ronan was moving before Thorne finished talking. Stay with Adrian, he told Lyra. Don't leave the infirmary until I get back. Like hell I'm staying. Lyra. He stopped, turned back. Haku, please. You're still healing, you just had your first shift, and I can't focus on dealing with the council if I'm worried about you. Stay here. Keep my son safe. Let me handle this. It grated against every instinct, but Lyra nodded. Fine. But if they try anything, I'll kill them myself. He was gone before she could respond, Thorn hurrying to keep up. The infirmary fell quiet, except for Adrian's labored breathing. Lyra sat beside his bed, her mind racing. What could the council be voting on that required keeping Ronan out? Nothing good. Nothing that boded well for either of them. Lyra? Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. She jumped, turned. His eyes were open, barely, but conscious. You're awake. Sort of. He tried to sit up, failed, settled for turning his head toward her. In the arena, did I hurt you? Nothing I won't heal from. That's not an answer, Adrian's voice cracked. I remember, pieces, being so angry, wanting to destroy you. It wasn't me, Lyra. It was the drug, but it felt real. Felt like I meant every... Stop. Lyra took his hand. I know it wasn't you. They poisoned you, turned you into a weapon. None of that was your fault. But I agreed to the trial. Put you in danger again. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. Even my attempts to help you end up being weapons against you. Then stop trying to help. The words came out harsher than intended. Lyra softened her tone. Adrian, you're a good person with good intentions. But I don't need saving. I need allies who trust me to save myself. That's not you. That's never been you. And my father is? Yes. No point lying about it. Ronan sees me as an equal. You see me as someone to protect. There's a difference. Adrian closed his eyes, fresh tears tracking down his face. I really did love you. Still do, I think. Just not in a way that helps either of us. I know. Lyra squeezed his hand gently. And someday you're going to find someone who needs that kind of love, who wants to be protected and treasured and kept safe. Then that's not me. But it's not wrong to want it. Just wrong for us? Yeah, just wrong for us. They sat in silence for a while, grieving what might have been if they'd been different people in a different world. Your wolf, Adrian finally said. Shadowcrest bloodline, that's huge, Lyra. The council's going to lose their minds. Already have, apparently. They're meeting without your father right now. Adrian's eyes snapped open. What? They can't... That's illegal without the king's presence for major votes, which is why they're keeping him out. Dread pooled in Lyra's stomach. What could they possibly be voting on that's worth breaking protocol? Understanding dawned on Adrian's face, followed by horror. Your status. They're going to try to strip you of Apex recognition, declare your wolf false or illegitimate or... The infirmary door slammed open. Ronan stood there, his face absolutely murderous. Get up, he said to Lyra. Both of you. We're going to the throne room. Now. What happened? The council just voted, narrowly, but they voted to strip you of Apex status and banish you from the kingdom as a false claimant to the Shadowcrest bloodline. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. They're saying your wolf was artificially induced through witchcraft or blood magic, that you're a threat to the natural order and need to be removed. Lyra felt the words like a physical blow. They can't. They just did, and they've given me until sunset tomorrow to enforce the banishment. If I refuse, he paused, they've called for a vote of no confidence. If I don't comply, they'll attempt to remove me from the throne. That's treason, Adrian said, struggling to sit up. That's desperation. I've been blocking their power plays for years. Now I've openly claimed a Shadowcrest as my... Ronan trailed off, searching for words. As my chosen, they see it as an existential threat, so they're playing their last card. Lyra's mind raced. What are our options? I refuse their vote, keep you here by force, and we see if they actually have the spine to follow through with removing me. That probably ends in civil war. Or you leave, accept banishment, and I let you go to preserve peace. The words hung between them like a death sentence. No, Lyra said immediately. I'm not running, not after everything I've survived to stand here. Then we're looking at war. Ronan's voice was steady, but she could see the cost in his eyes. The noble families against the crown. Border lords taking advantage of the chaos. Thousands dead so I can keep one woman by my side. Are you prepared for that? Was she? Lyra thought about the soldiers who'd knelt to her, the servants who'd shown her kindness, the countless people who'd done nothing wrong except exist in a kingdom with a broken power structure. There has to be another way, she said. If there is, I haven't found it. The council's made their move. We have to respond. Then I'll respond. Lyra stood, ignoring the protest from her ribs. Call them together, all of them. Every noble family, every council member, everyone who voted for my banishment. I want to see them face to face. Lyra, do it, please. She met Ronan's eyes. Trust me, I have an idea. The throne room was packed. Every noble family, every council member, guards lining the walls, witnesses crammed into every available space. They'd come expecting drama, expecting confrontation between a king and his council. What they got was Lyra Vance walking in with her head high and her wolf barely contained beneath her skin. She dressed carefully, simple soldier's leathers that marked her as guard, not nobility. No crown, no royal colors, nothing that suggested she was claiming more than what she'd earned. But her presence still dominated the room in a way that had nothing to do with clothing. Ronan sat on his throne, looking every inch a king. Adrian stood beside him, still pale from the poison, but upright. A united royal front. And across from them, the council sat in judgment, with Lord Silvercrest at the center. You called this gathering, Silvercrest said, his voice carrying across the chamber. State your purpose. My purpose, Lyra said clearly, is to ask you all one question. What are you so afraid of? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Silvercrest's eyes narrowed. We fear nothing. We're simply upholding the kingdom's laws and natural order. Bullshit. The word cut through the formal atmosphere like a blade. You're terrified. Not of me specifically, of what I represent. That power isn't just about who your parents were. That someone wolfless, someone you all dismissed and mocked, could have more strength than your entire bloodline combined. Your wolf is false. My wolf is real. The Arbiter confirmed it. Ancient bloodline, apex dominant, everything you claim to value in this kingdom. But it's wrapped in the wrong package, so you're calling it fraud. Lyra moved closer to the council's seats. Here's what I think. I think you know I'm legitimate, and that scares you so badly you're willing to risk civil war to remove me. This is absurd. Is it? Lyra turned to address the entire room. Let's talk about what happened in that arena. Lady Celeste challenged me to a trial to the death. I survived using skill, courage, and refusal to quit. Then the council manufactured a second trial, drugged the prince to turn him into a weapon, and I survived that too. And instead of accepting that maybe, just maybe, I earned my place, you're changing the rules. Declaring my wolf false because admitting it's real means admitting your system is broken. The room had gone silent. So here's my offer, Lyra continued. One more trial. But not against a person. Against your entire power structure. Put me through every test you use to measure apex bloodlines. Ancient trials, strength challenges, dominance displays. Whatever you've got. If I fail even one, I accept banishment willingly. But if I pass, she paused, let the words sink in. If I pass, this ends. No more inquiries, no more manufactured challenges. You accept that I'm Shadowcrest, that I'm Apex, and you stop trying to kill me for having the audacity to survive. And if we refuse your offer, Lady Thornridge asked, then the king refuses your banishment order, and we all get to watch this kingdom tear itself apart over whether one woman deserves to exist. Lyra's voice went hard. Your choice. One final trial that proves me true or false, or civil war that kills thousands. Seems like an easy decision to me. Lord Silvercrest stood slowly. You're very confident for someone who's had her wolf for less than a day. I'm confident because I've spent my entire life proving myself to people who wanted me to fail. This is just the same thing on a larger scale. The ancient trials haven't been performed in 2 generations. They're designed to test bloodline purity, innate dominance, the ability to command other wolves through will alone. Most Apex candidates complete 3 or 4. Full Shadowcrest would require completing all 7. Then I'll complete all 7. The crowd's murmur became a roar. 7 trials. No one had managed 7 in living memory. It was considered impossible. a myth left over from when the bloodlines had been pure. This is insanity, Ronan said quietly, though his voice carried. Lyra, you don't have to prove yourself this way. Yes, I do. She turned to look at him. Not to you, not even to myself anymore, but to them. So they can never again claim I didn't earn what I have. So every wolfless child growing up in this kingdom knows that power isn't just inherited, that you can fight for it, survive for it, become it even when everyone says you can't. Something shifted in Ronan's expression, pride, fear, and acceptance mixing together. Then I stand with you, as your second, your witness, and your... He paused, then said it clearly for the entire court to hear. As your chosen mate, if you'll have me. The throne room exploded into chaos. A king didn't declare chosen mates publicly without formal courtship, without council approval, without all the political dance that made such bonds acceptable. Ronan had just bypassed all of it, claimed Lyra in front of the entire kingdom, and dared anyone to challenge him. This is unprecedented, Silvercrest roared. So is everything else about her. Ronan stood, descended from his throne to stand beside Lyra. I'm done pretending politics matter more than truth. Lyra Vance is Shadowcrest. She's Apex. And she's mine. Those are the facts. Everything else is just noise. The council will accept her trial by ordeal, Ronan interrupted. Or the council will find itself at war with a king, a Shadowcrest, and everyone in this kingdom tired of watching potential get destroyed to protect the status quo. Decide quickly. My patience is running out. Lord Silvercrest and Ronan stared at each other across the throne room, two alphas measuring dominance, calculating odds, deciding whether this fight was worth the cost. Finally, Silvercrest bowed his head, just slightly, just enough to signal concession without submission. We accept her trial, he said, biting off each word. 7 tests of the ancient bloodlines. She passes all 7. We recognize her claim. She fails even one. I won't fail, Lyra said with more confidence than she felt. Then prepare yourself, girl. Silvercrest's smile was cold. The trials begin at dawn, and they're designed to break anyone who doesn't have Shadowcrest blood running true through their veins. We'll see just how real your wolf is when it's tested properly. The council filed out, taking the nobles with them. Within minutes, the throne room had emptied except for Lyra, Ronan, Adrian, and Captain Thorn. That was either brilliant or suicidal, Thorn said. Haven't decided which yet. Probably both. Lyra's legs felt weak, but she stayed upright through sheer will. What did I just agree to? The trial by ordeal, Ronan said quietly. 7 tests that measure everything from physical strength to mental dominance to the ability to command other wolves through presence alone. Most Apex candidates train for years before attempting them. You've had your wolf for hours. Then we better start training. Lyra turned to face him, took his hands in hers. Thank you. For standing with me. For claiming me in front of everyone, even though it'll make everything harder. Nothing about us has ever been easy. Ronan pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. Why start now? Your Majesty, Captain Thorn interrupted gently. We should prepare. The trials start at dawn. That's less than 12 hours. Then we don't waste time. Ronan kept one arm around Lyra as he turned to address both Thorn and Adrian. I need everything we have on the ancient trials. Records, descriptions, anything that tells us what she'll face. Adrian, I'll help, the prince said immediately. Whatever you need. However I can be useful. Good, because we're going to need every advantage we can find. Ronan looked down at Lyra, and the fear in his eyes was barely masked. No one's completed all 7 trials in living memory. The last person who tried died during the 5th test. Then I better be smarter than them. Lyra, I'm not backing down, Ronan. I've come too far, survived too much. Either I prove myself tomorrow or I die trying. Those are the only options I'm willing to accept. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Then we make sure you don't die. Whatever it takes. Starting now. They worked through the night, pulling records, studying accounts of past trials, trying to piece together what Lyra would face at dawn. The tests were deliberately vague, passed down through oral tradition more than written documentation. But patterns emerged. Strength, dominance, will, command, sacrifice, transformation, unity. 7 tests, 7 aspects of what made an apex bloodline worthy of the name. The first one's always physical, Adrian said, reading from an ancient text. Raw strength challenge. Usually they make you shift and fight multiple opponents simultaneously. How many opponents? Depends on the bloodline. For Shadowcrest, he paused. Records say 6, all of them mature warriors. 6 on 1. While still learning how to control her wolf, Lyra felt her stomach drop but kept her face neutral. What else? They went through each trial as best they could, but so much was missing. The ancient families had kept secrets deliberately, made sure complete knowledge was never written down. By the time dawn approached, Lyra had fragments, hints, and a growing certainty that she was about to step into something designed to kill her. You should rest, Ronan said when the sky started lightening. Can't. Too wound up. Then at least eat. Drink water. You'll need your strength. Lyra forced down food that tasted like ash. Her wolf was pacing under her skin, eager, restless, wanting to prove itself, but also terrified of what was coming. Lyra. Ronan pulled her aside while Adrian and Thorn gathered supplies. If this goes wrong, if at any point you're in danger of dying, submit. I don't care about the political consequences. I care about you living. If I submit, they win. Everything we fought for is lost. Better lost than dead. Not to me. She kissed him, fierce, desperate, maybe goodbye. I love you. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that. Don't, Ronan's voice cracked. Don't say it like that. Like you're preparing for the end. I'm preparing for the fight. Lyra straightened, forced steel into her spine. But if the end comes, I want you to know I chose you. That everything we did, everything we risked, I'd do it again, even if it kills me. She walked toward the arena before he could respond, before her own fear could overwhelm the determination driving her forward. The trials were waiting, and so was her future, whatever form it took. The ancient trial ground was different from the regular arena, older, smaller, with symbols carved into stone that predated the current kingdom. The noble families sat in judgment once again, but this time they looked almost eager, hungry for the spectacle of watching her fail. Lord Silvercrest stood in the center, flanked by the council. Lyra Vance, you have claimed Shadowcrest bloodline and apex status. Today you will prove that claim through the 7 trials of the ancient way. Do you understand the terms? I do. Do you accept that failure in any trial means death or exile, and success in all 7 means recognition of your bloodline? I accept. Then let the first trial begin. Silvercrest gestured, and 6 warriors stepped forward, all of them massive wolves, all of them looking at her like she was already dead. Trial of strength. Survive combat against 6 mature warriors in wolf form. You may shift now. Lyra took a breath, reached for her wolf, and let it surge forward. The transformation was easier this time, still painful, but faster, more controlled. She landed on 4 legs, midnight fur bristling, silver white eyes blazing. And when the 6 warriors attacked, she showed them exactly why Shadowcrest bloodline had once ruled this kingdom. And when the 6 warriors attacked, she showed them exactly why Shadowcrest bloodline had once ruled this kingdom. The first warrior came at her head on, a gray wolf built like a battering ram. Lyra didn't dodge. She met him chest to chest, felt the impact shudder through her bones, and then something inside her wolf roared to life. Pure dominance, primal and undeniable. The gray wolf's legs buckled mid-attack, his body responding to an authority older than conscious thought. He dropped, throat exposed, submission absolute. The crowd gasped. The remaining 5 warriors circled more carefully now. They'd expected a fight. What they were seeing was something else entirely. A demonstration of power that bypassed physical combat and went straight to the core of what made wolves bow. 2 attacked simultaneously from opposite sides. Lyra spun, caught one by the throat with her jaws, not biting, just holding, while her claws raked across the other's face. The one in her jaws went limp immediately. The other scrambled back, whining. 3 left. They came at her together, coordinated, trying to use pack tactics to overwhelm her. But Lyra's wolf had spent 23 years dormant, building pressure like a dam about to break. When it finally unleashed, there was nothing coordinated tactics could do against raw apex dominance. She didn't just fight them. She commanded them. Her howl cut across the trial ground, a sound that made every wolf in attendance flinch. It carried weight, authority, the voice of a bloodline that had ruled before any of them were born. The three attacking warriors froze mid-charge, their bodies betraying them, instinct overriding intention. One by one, they lowered their heads and dropped to their bellies. The trial ground fell silent except for Lyra's heavy breathing. 6 mature warriors lay submissive before her, none of them having landed a serious blow. It should have taken brutal combat, minutes of violence. Instead, it was over in seconds, decided not by strength, but by something far more fundamental. Lord Silvercrest's face had gone pale. The first trial is complete. Shadowcrest bloodline confirmed. Lyra shifted back to human form, the transformation smoother now, less agonizing. Someone threw her a robe. She wrapped it around herself with shaking hands, trying to process what had just happened. That was impossible, she heard someone whisper. She didn't even fight them properly. She didn't have to. Did you see them submit? That's pure bloodline dominance. Hasn't been seen in— Silence, Silvercrest snapped. He looked older suddenly, like the weight of what he was witnessing had aged him in minutes. The second trial will commence after a brief respite. Candidate may rest and receive water. Ronan was there immediately, pressing a water skin into her hands, his eyes burning with pride and fear in equal measure. That was extraordinary. That was terrifying. Lyra drank, tried to steady her breathing. I didn't fight them, Ronan. I just looked at them and they fell. Is that normal? For Shadowcrest at full power? Yes. For someone who's had their wolf for less than a day? He shook his head. No. You're either naturally gifted or your bloodline is stronger than anyone expected. Possibly both. 6 more trials to go. 5. You passed the first. He squeezed her shoulder gently. Whatever comes next, remember, you don't have to prove anything to me. You already did that when you refused to die in Celeste's jaws. I have to prove it to them. Lyra looked at the assembled nobles, at the calculation in their eyes. They're already trying to figure out how to spin this, how to make my success look like luck or trickery. I need to be so undeniably legitimate that they can't twist the truth. Then show them. Ronan's voice dropped to something intimate, meant only for her. Show them what happens when they try to break someone who refuses to stay broken. The second trial was announced before Lyra had fully caught her breath. Trial of dominance, Silvercrest declared. The candidate will enter the submission circle. Every wolf in attendance may challenge her dominance. She must force submission from each challenger without physical violence. Bloodline authority only. Adrian appeared at her elbow, his face grim. This is the trial that kills most candidates. It's not about fighting. It's about holding your ground while wolves with decades of experience try to break your will. Some candidates last minutes. Most collapse from the mental strain. How many challengers usually enter? For regular Apex trials, maybe 5 or 6. For you? Adrian looked at the assembled nobles. They're going to throw everyone they have, 20, 30 challengers, maybe more. They want to exhaust you before the later trials. Lyra squared her shoulders. Then let them come. The submission circle was exactly that, a ring of stones barely 15 feet across. Lyra stepped inside, shifted back to wolf form. Her midnight fur seemed to absorb the light, and her silver-white eyes blazed as she planted her feet and waited. The first challenger entered, an older wolf with scars marking a lifetime of battles. He approached slowly, his posture aggressive, dominance radiating from every line of his body. Most candidates would have already started backing down. The psychological pressure of facing down a veteran warrior was intense. Lyra met his gaze and didn't blink. The pressure built between them, invisible but palpable, 2 wills locked in combat. The old warrior's eyes began to water. His stance wavered, and then, with a whine of frustration, he lowered his head and backed out of the circle. The crowd murmured. 1 down. They came faster after that. Young warriors trying to make names for themselves, experienced soldiers testing her resolve. Even a few nobles stepped forward, their wolves radiating generations of assumed superiority. Lyra held the circle's center and refused to give ground. Each challenger tried different tactics. Some came at her with raw aggression. Others used subtle psychological pressure, trying to find cracks in her confidence. One attempted to use pack bonding techniques, trying to make her submit to group authority. None of it worked, because Lyra had spent her entire life being told she wasn't enough, had survived years of people trying to break her will, undermine her confidence, force her into accepting their judgment of her worth. This was just the same thing in wolf form, and she'd already proven she could withstand it as human. By the 20th challenger, exhaustion was setting in. Holding dominance wasn't physical violence, but it was violence nonetheless. A constant expenditure of will, of self, of the absolute certainty that you would not bow. Lyra's legs shook. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she held. Enough! Ronan's voice cut across the trial ground. She's proven the point. How many more do you need to see submit before... The trial continues until no more challengers come forward, Silvercrest interrupted. Those are the rules. Then let me make this faster. Lyra's voice came out rough, distorted by her wolf form, but understandable. She turned to face the assembled nobles, all the wolves who'd been waiting their turn to challenge. Come at me together, all of you at once. Let's finish this. The trial ground erupted in shock. Facing multiple challengers simultaneously violated every tradition. It was considered impossible. Dominance was a one-on-one assertion. You couldn't hold ground against a pack. She can't be serious, Lady Thornridge said. She's exhausted and making mistakes, someone else added. Or, Ronan said quietly, she's proving that Shadowcrest bloodline operates on different rules than you're used to. 10 wolves entered the circle, then 15, then 20. They surrounded Lyra, hemming her in, their combined dominance pressure like a physical weight trying to crush her into the ground. Lyra stood in the center, her midnight fur bristling, and gathered every scrap of strength she had left. What came out wasn't dominance, it was something older, more primal. A presence that made the ancient stones of the trial ground hum with resonance, the kind of power that had ruled kingdoms before laws and councils, when leadership was decided by who could make others follow through sheer force of being. One by one, the wolves in the circle dropped. Not slowly, not reluctantly, they collapsed like puppets with cut strings, their bodies betraying them on an instinctual level that overrode everything else. Within seconds, 20 wolves lay submissive around Lyra's feet. The silence that followed was absolute. Trial of dominance, the arbiter's voice shook slightly. Is complete. Shadowcrest bloodline confirmed. Lyra shifted back, her legs giving out the moment she was human again. She hit the ground hard, caught herself on hands and knees, gasping for air. Every cell in her body screamed exhaustion. Ronan was there instantly, supporting her weight, murmuring reassurances she couldn't quite hear over the ringing in her ears. Someone pressed water to her lips. She drank greedily, felt the world slowly come back into focus. How many more? She managed to ask. 5 trials left, Adrian said, appearing at her other side. But Lyra, you need to rest. No one's completed 2 trials back-to-back like this. The council has to allow recovery time. The candidate may rest for 1 hour, Silvercrest announced. Then the trials continue. Time is part of the test, the ability to endure multiple challenges without lengthy recovery. Those are the ancient rules. The ancient rules, Ronan snarled, were designed to test prepared candidates who'd trained for years, not someone who's had their wolf for a day. If she cannot complete the trials under proper conditions, perhaps her claim to Shadowcrest bloodline is weaker than it appears. It was a trap. Lyra saw it clearly, even through her exhaustion. Give her time to rest, and they'd claim she needed special treatment, that a true Shadowcrest wouldn't require it. Push her forward while she was depleted and hope the remaining trials broke her. 1 hour is fine, Lyra said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'll be ready. Lyra, I'll be ready, she repeated, meeting Ronan's eyes. I have to be. They moved her to a preparation tent where healers worked frantically to restore her energy. Maris appeared with potions that tasted like death, but cleared some of the fog from Lyra's mind. Food was pressed into her hands, water, constantly. Adrian read from the ancient texts, trying to prepare her for what was coming. Trial of will is next, he said. Mental endurance test. They'll use illusions, fear projections, psychological torture. The goal is to make you break psychologically, even if your body holds strong. How do you pass? By holding on to yourself, knowing what's real and what's projection. Most candidates get lost in the illusions and have to be pulled out before they hurt themselves or others. Wonderful. Lyra forced down more food. Her body was recovering faster than a human's would. Apex healing, but not fast enough. What about the other 4 trials? Trial of command. You have to lead a group through a tactical scenario. Trial of sacrifice. You give up something valuable to prove the bloodline's selflessness. Trial of transformation. You shift between forms repeatedly until your body can't handle it anymore, proving your wolf is stable. And finally, trial of unity. You bond with another wolf on a deep level, proving your bloodline can form the kind of connections necessary for pack leadership. That last one sounds suspiciously like mate bonding. It is. Usually candidates prepare by bringing their chosen mate to the trial. Adrian paused. Since you and Father already declared for each other, he'll probably stand with you for that one. Lyra looked at Ronan, who'd been silent through most of the preparation. His face was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in the way he held himself. Are you going to tell me this is insane and I should stop? Would it matter if I did? Not even a little. Then no. I'm going to sit here and watch you be impossibly stubborn and brave and try not to think about what happens if one of these trials goes wrong. He took her hand, pressed it to his chest where his heart hammered. But for the record, I've never been more terrified or more proud in my entire life. The hour passed too quickly. The trial of will began with Lyra standing alone in the circle, while a robed figure, one of the ancient order who maintained the old ways, chanted words in a language she didn't recognize. The air grew heavy, thick with something that pressed against her mind like hands trying to pry open her skull. Then the world shifted. She was back in the arena with Celeste, except this time she was losing. Claws tore through her chest, ripped out her throat, and she was drowning in blood while the crowd cheered. She died there in the sand, alone and forgotten. The vision dissolved. Lyra gasped, fighting to remember it wasn't real. Another vision took its place, Ronan turning away from her, disgust on his face. You really thought I meant those pretty words? You're nothing. You've always been nothing. I just needed a political tool, and you were convenient. The words cut deeper than Celeste's claws. Lyra felt tears streaming down her face, felt the certainty that he was right, that she'd been fooling herself. No, that wasn't real either. She knew Ronan, had seen him prove his feelings through actions, not just words. This was projection, designed to find her weaknesses and exploit them. She held on to that knowledge like a lifeline. The visions came faster, her parents alive and disappointed, telling her she'd shamed their memory. The soldiers she'd trained with laughing at her presumption. Adrian calling her a parasite who'd destroyed his life. Lady Celeste standing triumphant while Lyra bled out at her feet. Each vision targeted a different fear, a different insecurity. But Lyra had spent years surviving in a world that constantly told her she wasn't enough. These fears weren't new, they were just louder. She endured. When the chanting finally stopped and the visions cleared, Lyra was on her knees with tear tracks down her face and her hands clenched so hard her nails had drawn blood from her palms. But she was conscious. She was whole. She'd held on to herself through the psychological assault. Trial of will complete, the arbiter announced. Shadowcrest bloodline confirmed. 3 trials down, 4 to go. The trial of command was almost a relief after the psychological torture. They gave her a team of 5 soldiers, none of them friendly, all of them skeptical, and a tactical scenario. Enemy forces attacking from multiple directions, limited resources, impossible odds. Lead the team to victory or fail the trial. Lyra fell back on years of training with Captain Thorne, on every lesson she'd learned surviving as the only wolfless soldier in a unit of wolves. She didn't try to be inspiring or charismatic. She was just competent, clear, and absolutely unwilling to accept defeat. You 3, Eastern approach. Dig in behind that ridge and hold. Don't be heroes. I need you alive, not brave. You 2, with me. We're going to hit them from behind while they're focused on the ridge position. That's suicide, one soldier protested. 3 attackers against their main force? It's misdirection. They'll expect us to hole up and defend. We're going to do the opposite. Make them think we've panicked and broken formation. When they overcommit to chase us down, our ridge team collapses on their flank. It shouldn't have worked. The scenario was designed to be unwinnable, to force the candidate into making impossible choices under pressure. But Lyra had spent her life finding ways to survive impossible situations. This was just another version of the same fight. They won, barely, with casualties that would have been devastating in a real battle. But they won. Trial of command complete. Shadowcrest bloodline confirmed. The trial of sacrifice was simpler and somehow worse. They brought out a chest containing various objects, weapons, gold, jewels, a written decree granting lands and titles, all things of value. And they asked one question: what will you sacrifice to prove your bloodline's commitment to the kingdom over personal gain? The trick was that everything in the chest was a trap. Sacrifice wealth, and they'd say she didn't value resources necessary for leadership. Sacrifice power, and they'd claim she was weak. Sacrifice weapons, and they'd call her naive about the realities of rule. Lyra looked at the chest's contents, then at the assembled nobles, and made her choice. I sacrifice my anonymity, she said clearly. Before today, I was just a soldier, unimportant, invisible. I could have stayed that way, taken the king's protection, lived quietly, avoided all this scrutiny and danger. Instead, I chose to stand here and prove myself publicly. I sacrificed privacy, safety, and the comfortable obscurity of being no one. Because the kingdom needs to know that power isn't just inherited, that strength can come from unexpected places. That's my sacrifice, the quiet life I could have had. The trial ground was silent. That's not a physical sacrifice, Lord Silvercrest said finally. The ancient trials don't specify physical sacrifice. They ask what you'll give up for the kingdom. I've given up everything. Lyra's voice didn't waver. My safety, my anonymity, my chance at a normal life. I've bled in these trials, nearly died multiple times, and accepted that I'll spend the rest of my existence watched, judged, and measured against impossible standards. If that's not sacrifice, I don't know what is. The Arbiter conferred with the Ancient Order members for what felt like hours. Finally, he nodded. Trial of sacrifice complete. Shadowcrest bloodline confirmed. 2 trials left. Lyra could barely stand. Her body was running on pure will at this point, every muscle screaming, her mind foggy with exhaustion. But she'd come too far to stop now. The trial of transformation will commence, Silvercrest announced. The candidate will shift between forms repeatedly until the trial master calls cessation. Most candidates manage 7 or 8 shifts before their body fails. Shadowcrest bloodline should maintain double that. 16 shifts. The number felt impossible. Lyra looked at Ronan. He'd gone pale, understanding the danger. Excessive shifting could damage the body permanently, could break the connection between human and wolf, could kill if pushed too far. Lyra, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She was already moving toward the circle's center. 1 more after this. Just have to survive 1 more. The first shift went smoothly. Human to wolf, familiar now. The second was harder. Wolf back to human, her body protesting the reversal. The third sent pain spiking through her nerve endings. By the 6th shift, Lyra was screaming. The transformations that had become almost easy were now agony. Bones breaking wrong, muscles tearing, her body confused about what form it was supposed to hold. But she kept going. 9 shifts. Her wolf form was smaller now, unstable. Blood dripped from her nose in human form. 12 shifts. She was crying openly, begging for it to stop, but her voice kept saying again, 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 because stopping meant failure. 15 shifts. The world was spinning. She couldn't remember if she was supposed to be human or wolf. Everything hurt in ways that transcended physical pain. 16, someone counted. She's matched the requirement. Continue, Silvercrest ordered. She'll die. That was Ronan, his voice breaking. If she's truly Shadowcrest, she can handle more. Continue. Lyra shifted again. 17. Her wolf form barely held together now, flickering like a candle flame in wind. Stop this, Ronan roared. You've made your point. She's proven. 1 more, Lyra gasped in human form, blood running from her eyes and nose. Just 1 more. Lyra, no. But she was already reaching for her wolf, forcing the transformation 1/18th time. The pain was transcendent, beyond anything she'd experienced even in the trials with Celeste and Adrian. Her body was breaking on a fundamental level, her wolf and human sides warring for dominance. She completed the shift, stood on 4 shaking legs in midnight wolf form, and then collapsed. Ronan was there before she hit the ground, catching her, shifting her back to human form himself, a trick she didn't know was possible. She lay in his arms, gasping, every breath feeling like it might be her last. Trial of transformation complete, the arbiter said quietly. 18 shifts. Shadow Crest bloodline confirmed beyond question. One trial left. She can't continue, Ronan said, his voice absolute. Look at her. She's barely conscious. The final trial requires bonding, Lyra managed to say. Her voice sounded like she'd swallowed glass. Bond with you. I can do that. Just need a minute. You need a hospital. Need to finish. She forced herself to sit up, immediately regretted it as the world tilted. Ronan's arms tightened around her, the only thing keeping her upright. One more trial. Then it's over. Then we win. This isn't worth your life. Yes, it is. Lyra met his eyes, tried to make him understand through the fog of pain and exhaustion. Every wolfless child in this kingdom is watching. Everyone who's ever been told they don't matter because of what they are instead of who they are. I have to finish. Not for me, for them. Ronan's jaw clenched. She watched him war with himself. The king who understood symbols and the man who just wanted her safe. Finally, he nodded. Then we do this together. And if at any point it becomes dangerous, I'm stopping it. I don't care about the trial. Deal. The trial of unity required them to enter the circle together, both in wolf form, and form a bond deep enough that the arbiter could sense it. Most candidates spent months preparing for this, building the mental and emotional connection necessary for true bonding. Lyra and Ronan had hours of declared interest and a relationship built on crisis and honesty. It should have been impossible. They shifted together, Lyra's transformation agonizing, barely controlled, but successful. Ronan's silver wolf was massive next to her midnight form, his presence both comforting and overwhelming. I don't know how to do this, Lyra admitted in wolf speech. Neither do I. Not really. Mate bonds form naturally when the connection is real. Ronan moved closer, his presence warm against her side. We just have to be honest. Let the bond find the truth between us. They stood together in the circle, two wolves from bloodlines that should have been enemies, and let their guards drop. The bond didn't form like a light switch flipping. It grew slowly, organically, built from every moment they'd shared. The first night on the tower, training sessions that left them both exhausted, the instant in the arena when he'd stepped between her and death. Every argument, every honest word, every time they'd chosen each other despite the rational reasons not to. Lyra felt it like a warmth spreading through her chest, a certainty that she wasn't alone. Could feel Ronan's emotions bleeding into hers, fear for her safety, pride in her strength, love so fierce it bordered on violence, and underneath it all, a bone-deep commitment that had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with two people who'd found something real in the middle of chaos. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. The arbiter gasped. That's not just a mate bond. That's something deeper. That's Shadow Crest unity, Ronan said, his wolf voice carrying pride and wonder. The kind of bond that made the bloodline legendary. Connection that goes beyond individual to something greater. Trial of unity complete, the arbiter said, awe in his voice. All 7 trials passed. Shadow Crest bloodline confirmed absolutely and without question. Lyra shifted back to human form one last time and immediately collapsed. She was done, empty, had given everything she had to proving herself, and there was nothing left. Ronan shifted too, caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. You're done. You did it. All 7? All 7. You're officially Apex, Shadow Crest bloodline. Everything they tried to deny you, you just proved beyond any possible doubt. The trial ground erupted into chaos. Nobles shouting, soldiers cheering, the council in emergency session trying to figure out what this meant for the kingdom's power structure. But Lyra barely heard it. She was drifting, consciousness fading, her body finally giving up now that the fight was over. Stay with me, Ronan said urgently. Healers, now! Did we win? Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, we won. Now stay awake. Good. She let her eyes close. That's good. The world went dark, and for the first time in her life, Lyra Vance felt safe falling. She woke 3 days later. The room was unfamiliar, larger than her soldiers' quarters, with actual windows and furniture that looked like it cost more than she'd earned in years. It took her a moment to place it. The royal wing. They'd moved her to the royal wing. "You're awake." Adrian sat in a chair beside her bed, looking exhausted but relieved. "Thank fuck. Father's been impossible. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just sat here waiting for you to wake up." "Where is he?" "Council meeting. They called emergency session to deal with the fallout from your trials. He didn't want to leave, but..." Adrian shrugged. "King duties don't stop even when you're worried sick." Lyra tried to sit up. Her body protested but obeyed. "What fallout?" "You passed all 7 ancient trials, something nobody's done in living memory. You're not just Apex, you're proven Shadowcrest bloodline, which means by ancient law you have claim to royal status." Adrian's smile was complicated. "Congratulations. You went from wolfless soldier to legitimate heir in about a week." "I don't want to be an heir." "Doesn't matter what you want. You are one now. The council's trying to figure out what that means for succession, for power balance, for everything." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Lyra, you've broken the entire system. The nobles can't deny you anymore. You've proven yourself too thoroughly. But they're terrified of what you represent. Change, merit over birthright. The possibility that everything they've built their power on is arbitrary. Good. Let them be terrified." "That's what Father keeps saying." Adrian laughed softly. "You two are perfect for each other, both absolutely willing to burn the kingdom down if it means doing what's right." The door opened and Ronan entered, mid-argument with someone Lyra couldn't see. "Don't care what precedent says. The precedent was set the moment she passed all 7 trials. Everything else is just the council trying to maintain power. They no longer..." He stopped, seeing Lyra awake. "You're up." "Apparently." He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulled her into a careful embrace that minded her healing injuries. 3 days. You've been unconscious for 3 days. The healers said you pushed your body past every safe limit, that you could have died from the strain. But I didn't. You could have." His voice was rough with emotion. "Don't ever do that to me again." "Can't promise that. I'm apparently Shadowcrest Apex now. Feels like dangerous situations might be part of the job description." Ronan pulled back, studied her face. "How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by a herd of very angry wolves." Lyra moved her arms experimentally. Everything hurt but worked. "But alive, which is more than I expected." "The bond helped," Adrian said quietly. "The healers said the mate bond you formed during the final trial accelerated your healing, something about shared life force." Lyra felt the bond then, a warm presence at the edge of her consciousness. Ronan's emotions bleeding into hers, his relief and love and barely controlled fear. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like home. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Ronan said, "we deal with the political nightmare you've created. The council wants to formally recognize your status, which means a ceremony, a title, all the official nonsense that makes nobility legitimate." "I don't need a title." "You need legal protection. Right now you're Apex by trial, but not by formal recognition. That leaves room for challenges, for technicalities the noble families will absolutely exploit." Ronan sat on the bed beside her. "I'm proposing we formalize everything at once. Your Apex status, our mate bond, your position in the kingdom's hierarchy. Make it so official that anyone wanting to challenge you has to go through so much legal structure, it's not worth attempting." "That sounds like making me a princess." "More like making you a queen." Ronan's voice was steady, but she could feel his uncertainty through the bond. "If you want it, if you're willing to tie yourself to this kingdom and this crown permanently. Because that's what I'm offering, Lyra. Not just recognition. Partnership. Ruling together as equals." The words hung in the air between them. "A week ago I was a wolfless soldier," Lyra said slowly. "Now you're asking me to be a queen. That's insane, Ronan. Everything about us has been insane. Why stop now?" "Because I don't know how to be a queen. I know how to fight, how to survive. how to refuse to quit. I don't know politics or diplomacy or you know how to lead. You proved that in the trial of command. You know how to make impossible choices. You've been doing it your entire life. And you know how to see through bullshit and demand better, which is honestly the most important qualification for dealing with nobility. Ronan took her hands in his. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be exactly what you've always been. Strong, honest, and willing to fight for what's right. The kingdom needs that. I need that. The question is whether you're willing to take it on. Lyra closed her eyes, felt the weight of the choice settling over her. She could refuse, walk away, take her proved bloodline and disappear into some quiet corner of the kingdom, live the peaceful life she'd once thought she wanted. But that woman, the one who dreamed of peace, had died somewhere between Celeste's jaws and the ancient trials. The woman who'd survived was someone different, someone who'd tasted power and recognized it as a tool for change, not just survival. Yes, she said, opening her eyes. I'll do it, but on my terms. I'm not becoming the kind of queen who sits pretty and smiles at court. I'm going to break things, change things, make the nobility very uncomfortable. I wouldn't expect anything else. Ronan's smile was fierce, proud. We'll break things together. The ceremony happened a week later, once Lyra could walk without gasping, and the healers reluctantly cleared her for public appearance. The throne room was packed. Every noble family, every important figure in the kingdom, witness to something that shouldn't be possible. A wolfless soldier becoming queen, a bloodline thought dead reclaiming power, a king choosing strength over politics. Lyra wore ceremonial robes that felt like a costume, but beneath them she wore her soldier's leathers, a reminder of who she'd been, who she still was under the formal trappings. The ancient arbiter performed the ceremony, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. Lyra Vance, proven Shadowcrest bloodline, apex dominant, victor of the 7 ancient trials. Do you swear to serve this kingdom with honor, strength, and wisdom? I do. Do you swear to protect the weak, lead the lost, and fight for justice even when justice is difficult? I do. Do you swear to stand beside King Ronan as equal partner, sharing power and responsibility for the kingdom's future? I do. The arbiter turned to Ronan. And do you, King Ronan, formally claim Lyra Vance as your mate and equal? I do. Ronan's voice was absolutely steady. Before every witness assembled, I claim her. My mate, my equal, my queen. Then by ancient law and modern recognition, I declare Lyra Vance to be Queen of Thornhaven, Shadowcrest Apex, and mate to the king. Let all assembled recognize her authority. The throne room held its breath. Then, slowly, Captain Thorne dropped to one knee. My loyalty to the queen. Other soldiers followed. Then some of the minor nobles, the ones who'd always existed at the edges of power, who recognized opportunity when they saw it. Not everyone. Half the room remained standing, their faces ranging from shock to barely controlled rage. But enough knelt, enough to make it real. Ronan took Lyra's hand, placed something cool and heavy on her finger. A ring, simple silver with a dark stone that caught the light like captured midnight. Welcome to the nightmare, he murmured low enough that only she could hear. Hope you're ready for the fight. I've been fighting my whole life, Lyra said. This is just the first time I'm fighting from a position of power instead of desperation. The ceremony concluded, the assembled nobles were dismissed, and Lyra found herself standing in the throne room with Ronan, staring at the second throne that had been placed beside his, smaller but equal in craftsmanship. That's mine? She asked. That's yours, if you want it. Lyra approached the throne slowly, ran her fingers over the carved wood. It was real. All of it was real. She was queen, had gone from worthless to royalty through sheer refusal to accept what everyone said was impossible. The noble families are going to make our lives hell, she said. Absolutely. Lady Celeste will probably try to assassinate me. She'll definitely try. The council will fight every reform, every change, every attempt to make this kingdom more equitable. Without question. Ronan moved to stand beside her. Still want the job? Lyra thought about every child who'd grow up in this kingdom. Every wolfless person who'd been told they were less. Every soldier who'd proven themselves only to be dismissed because they didn't fit the right mold. She thought about the power to change things, to break the system that had tried to break her. Yeah, she said, settling into the throne that was somehow exactly her size. I really do. The war room meeting that night was smaller, just Ronan, Lyra, Captain Thorne, Adrian, and a few trusted advisors. They were planning the future, deciding how to use the power Lyra's trials had granted them. The Border Lords are watching, Thorne reported. Some are nervous about the change in power. Others see opportunity to press claims. We need to make a show of strength. Or we make a show of change, Lyra countered. The Border Lords follow power, right? So let's give them a reason to follow me. I visit the borders personally, talk to the soldiers, the common people. Show them that Apex doesn't just mean dominance. It means leadership that actually gives a damn. That's dangerous, one advisor protested. If they see it as weakness, let them try. Lyra's voice carried the weight of someone who'd survived 7 impossible trials. I didn't fight my way to this position to hide in a castle. The kingdom needs to see what Shadowcrest bloodline means now. Not tyranny or genetic superiority. Strength in service of something better. Ronan was smiling. You're going to be a very inconvenient queen, aren't you? That's the plan. They worked late into the night, planning reforms and changes and all the ways they'd use Lyra's legitimacy to break the power structures that had dominated for generations. It wouldn't be easy. It would probably be bloody. But for the first time, real change felt possible. As the meeting broke up, Adrian pulled Lyra aside. I wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything, for being too weak to stand with you when it mattered. You're standing with me now, Lyra said gently. That's what matters. I'm proud of you, weirdly, genuinely proud. His smile was sad but real. You're going to be a better queen than I would have been a king. Maybe, but you'll make a good advisor if you want the job. Really? Really. You understand politics in ways I don't, and you've learned from your mistakes. Lyra touched his shoulder briefly. We all have. That's what makes us stronger. Adrian nodded, something like hope in his eyes. Then I'm in. Whatever you need. Later, alone in the royal chambers that were now hers and Ronan's, Lyra stood at the window overlooking the kingdom. Lights sparkled in the darkness, homes, lives, people who'd never know how close they'd come to having their world shaken apart. Regrets? Ronan asked, coming up behind her. About 100, but not about this. Lyra leaned back against him, felt his arms come around her carefully. A month ago I was nobody. Now I'm queen. It's surreal. A month ago you were somebody. You just didn't know it yet. Ronan rested his chin on top of her head. The crown didn't make you powerful, Lyra. You were always powerful. You just finally have the platform to use it. No pressure or anything. Would you prefer I lie and say it'll be easy? No, I prefer the truth, even when it's terrifying. She turned in his arms, looked up at his scarred face. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked through me, for standing with me when it would have been easier not to, for being brave enough to love someone the kingdom said wasn't worth loving. Thank you for refusing to die, Ronan said, pulling her closer, for being stubborn enough to survive everything they threw at you, for choosing me even when I came with impossible complications. We're both idiots. Probably. But we're idiots with crowns and the power to change things. That's not nothing. They stood together in the window, king and queen, looking out at the kingdom they'd fight to make better. The road ahead would be brutal, full of enemies, challenges, and fights that might destroy them. But they'd face it together. And somewhere in the castle, in the soldiers' quarters where Lyra had once lived in obscurity, young recruits were already telling stories. About the wolfless girl who refused to bow. About impossible trials and bloodlines awakening. About how strength wasn't always what you were born with, but what you refused to let go of, even when the world demanded your surrender. The stories would spread. They always did. And every child who heard them would learn something the nobles had tried desperately to suppress. That power could be earned, that worth could be proven, that the girl everyone dismissed as broken and worthless could become the queen who changed everything. In the harshest world, Lyra Vance hadn't just survived. She'd rewritten destiny itself, and she was only getting started.